All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Trash Talk Tuesday.
That
I
was a
think
cool intro.
I already know, right? Cost me $10 on the internet.
Who'd you pay?
I went to a random website and put all the stuff in and made
Wait, so
magic
you
happen.
you made it?
Kind of, yeah.
Nice. That's good.
Some old lady in Bangladesh, but whatever.
All right. Well, anyways, welcome to Trash Talk Tuesday. I'm here joined as usual by Dominarch, Loki, Rain, and myself. Go ahead and say hi, guys, and welcome everybody to the show.
Hi
Hello,
guys.
hello.
What's up?
So, as you can see, we are on our own Twitch channel now. I broke the show away from um, the regular my Redline 13 channel, just so that I could have we could have our own here. And make sure if you're tuning in that you follow the channel so that we can make sure you get notified when we go live. And for anybody who's unfamiliar with how the show works, even though I know that most of the I made a bot for this, Rain, but the Discord, it doesn't link it for some reason. It's weird, but I have a bot command for it. Anyways, how this show works is that really anybody can join in on the fun. It's not restricted to just the four of us here or whatever guests we have on. Anybody can come in and talk about whatever they want to. And I'm thinking tonight is probably going to be a big night for talking because of the points that we're talking about, and generally how salty I am about some of the changes that are coming. And I think that we'll have some people that aren't quite so salty. So speaking of that, I am going to go ahead and drag our buddy Lord Servant in here. He was on the show last week, very talkative member of the show, and he is welcome again. Hello, Lord Servant. I've brought you into the channel. Thanks for letting me.
What up?
Thanks for letting me get the intro out of the way. I appreciate it. How's it going, man?
Fantastic. It's been a fantastic day. Probably one of the best days I've had since quarantine started.
Yeah, quarantine. Oof.
I mean, we got mostly fantastic changes in the right direction planned on the board. I got a lot of stuff done at work. I woke up at a reasonable time instead of 1 minute before work starts. Working from home, you get lazy. And
Absolutely.
then a day of absolute nonstop slaughter.
Nice.
So I'm very happy.
Well, so let's jump straight into it because they just released this today, right? Yeah, just today.
Yeah.
They released the changes that are coming in the surgical strike update on April 15th. And I've got this graphic that I'm going to overlay on the screen here because this is a professional stream. And as you can see, we are very professionally overlaying graphics. Woo! Anyways.
Beautiful. High quality. It's high quality production stuff here.
I'm getting better. I'm streaming consistently, so it's all good. So anyway, let's talk about this. So, and here's Blazing Bunny. Blazing Bunny is joined as well.
Yo.
Hey, buddy. So let's talk about these. Let's talk about these changes as this update goes down, just so that we can get kind of like an objective view about it, and then we can decide what we think as we go. So the first thing that I want to address is the greeting. Resilient Capsuleers. What's that? Are they saying that because they're trying to kill us? What's going on here?
I hadn't thought of it that way, but I think you're right.
I figure it
Son of
could
a
be a
bitch.
comment for like quarantine. Like, hey guys, you're in a shitty situation, but you're very resilient. Thanks for sticking around.
I think it's we know our changes suck for
Yeah.
you guys. You're gonna be mad about it, but we know you're resilient. You'll figure a way to survive.
Yeah, like no matter how much we fuck up the game, you're gonna continue to pay your subs and try to have.
So what are let's just jump right in. What do you mean by the changes suck? I'm very
I
curious.
don't.
I have the
I'm
opposite
okay with them
perspective.
actually. But I think that's what they mean. They think that we're going to be unhappy by him, but we're going to stick with the game anyway. That's what that means.
All right.
I
So
will say,
resilient. Okay.
with the wording choices and like the changes, like I don't mind any of the changes, but I really am salty about the fact that they're like, Logi is too strong, so we're gonna do this blanket change to nerf Logi because fuck. Like, I really did not like that. But that's like, I'm salty, so.
Well, that's more of like a collateral damage type change, right?
No, that was intended. They intended to nerf Logi.
Oh.
Somebody have a link to this? I want to. Will be able to look at them while I'm.
Yeah,
It was
I put it
pasted
in
in
the
the
Twitch chat.
Oh,
Well,
I
I
just
I
joined.
don't think that
It's
it's
on the Smart.
necessarily a nerf of Logi so much as it's an elegant nerf to EHP, which also has a knock-on effect of slightly reducing Logi, which can be a bit of an issue in the larger numbers, like most of EVE is.
I just as a Logi pilot, I know I have to press more than like F1 and anchor, and after flying in like literal hundreds of Munin fleets for the past 2 years and shit, like the Logi wing always gets killed first. It's because Logi are weaker than AHAX, or not AHAX, hacks in general. So
Are
like that,
more
like that.
hacks.
I know,
They
yeah,
don't
no,
have-
my
They
bad.
don't have ADCs, so
Yeah, but like generally in a fleet fight, and I've experienced this both with like on the winning side and the losing side. If you are having Logi, like no matter how many Logi you bring, if your alliance or your fleet or whomever is just dumb, they don't broadcast in time, they don't turn on their hardeners, they don't overheat, etc., they're just gonna die. Like it doesn't matter how many Logi you have, whether it's a fax, whether it's 20 fax, whether it's simmies or 200 simmies, they're gonna die.
See,
And
and,
so
I didn't read this as they think Logis are too powerful.
it's a literal quote. They say Logi is
No,
too strong.
the overall power of logistics
Yeah.
is different than being that Logis is too powerful. Those are different statements.
Yeah, I
Not
think it's
really.
definitely context because they specifically call out and say diminishes the overall power of logistics and will make model focus on speed, damage more attractive option, and
Correct.
blah, blah, blah. I saw it some of capitals. So
But
the
they're not
approach is
saying-
not only does it lower capital survivability, so they're trying to hit capital survivability,
Capitals,
and I think
exactly.
specifically faxes. It's not necessarily, man, that guy in the semi, fuck that guy. Like they're not thinking like that.
I
They're
agree.
thinking
That's the
more.
way I took it.
Well,
I
but,
took
Yeah.
it
but if
more
they
that
wanted
way.
to do that, then they could make nerfs or changes or whatever you want to call it that don't affect subcaps. So similar to how, do you remember? I think it was last year where they had like the overall Logi rep. When they nerfed that, it was very specific to faxes because you'd have these hundred of capital ship brawls, and you just bring more fax. Well, then they added diminishing returns, and if you had your 20-man Logi fleet, which I would say most comps generally at least would have 20 if you're maxing out your fleet. Like that's pretty reasonable. It wouldn't affect them. But what it did affect was like the fax end and piling 200 faxes on one Titan to keep it alive type
Okay,
situation.
so counterpoint then, would you go ahead and say that if they buffed Logi rep amount by 20%, would you feel better about that? The Logi rep is the same, but the EHP on the ships getting shot is not.
Including the Logi, though. Logi already dies first as it is. I mean,
That's true, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
from my,
you're right about that. Yeah.
I'd say at least on the big like the Munin fleets.
Personally,
It's been a while since I've been in those, but I mean, at least when I was up in NZ and all that shit, like at the scale, everything just dies in one shot anyways, unless you're losing your mass, and then you've got a problem. Like every 1 out of 10 or something will survive a rep or something. Most of the time, they're just insta popping regardless. So it's not really like the surviving with Logi isn't really a thing that happens except at the smaller scale, where I think this is less of an issue.
So I think that Logi should have their own version of the ADC that increases their reps and also makes them harder, like easier, that makes them tank more. But that's a pipe dream, and that would be very broken.
I would actually love to see them increase the Logi ships and the Tech 1 Logi ships base resists. Just up those. They don't have to use the modules that with a 20% reduction.
Sure.
That would I could support something like that because I agree. Making them easier to kill is not the right thing for Logi.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for
that other one was a direct attack against Logi. That last one when they the diminishing returns.
yeah,
I think this one is more of a we're recognizing the power of logistics. We're going to change this, and we feel confident that through your guys's what do you call it?
Ingenuity.
Ingenuity and your ability to Logi, you'll be able to come up with a plan to make this work. That's the way I took it. I can see you being a Logi guru. I could see not thinking that, but
And so
we'll see though. I'm not a theory crafter.
for reference, what we're specifically talking about here is the change that was made to the resistance modules, correct? The we're talking about the 20% reduction across the board to any of the modules that give armor or shield HP. No hull though, so I mean damage controls are still lit, right?
Whole tank Brutix is the new meta.
It
Oh,
must
Flying
be.
that Jetta now.
So, and this is the part where you're saying it's a direct attack on Logi, and I see the part where they mention that. So, what do we think? I know Loki, you're an FC. Blazing, you're an FC. Lords, you're kind of an FC. I'm just fucking.
Kind of an
I'm
FC.
I'm just fucking with you,
Fuck
dude.
out of here, guy.
I'm just fucking with you.
what
But
alliance was
what?
that again?
Forsaken Empire. So what do we make of this change, and what do we think that this is actually gonna do to like true fleet fighting in general? Like, is it gonna make that big of a difference? Because like Lord was saying, it's all it's something where if you're in that big of a fleet, like your ship is gonna die regardless of whether or not you have 20% less CHP to rep through. Like the scale is still just massive, right?
Witnessing
Yeah.
the dawn of the whole tank ships.
No, you will not.
So I might be wrong, but so my perspective, and again, I've been out of the very, very larger size for a little bit now. But my perspective was always you trade back and forth until one side either lost a shit ton of stuff or they were lost enough that they were no longer trading favorably and they just fuck off. I kind of feel like we're going to have that exact same situation, except rather than trading, like you're catching reps ever so often. I think it just can be a little bit bloodier and fights almost might speed up where you'll lose a bunch of stuff and you'll still be breaking stuff, with less numbers, obviously, because with less HP, you have less stuff you have less numbers needed to hit critical mass. So I almost feel like fights may speed up a little bit where you'll get to the point where one side has lost as many ships as they can and they have to leave. I feel like that might happen faster now at the larger scale. I could be wrong.
Well, I think that's exactly what they're going for with the change as well, because they mentioned that the hope is to see bloodier fights, less stalemates, and a huge cross-sectional shift in the fitting meta. And I guess, Bunny, what do you think that shift in the meta looks like?
Honestly, people are trying to theory craft their way through this as much as possible. I spent I know we're not hitting on capitals yet, but I spent quite a long time today sitting on Singularity and looking at what Titan and super capital EHP looks like, and talking to the other FCs that I speak to about what the implication of that is. But honestly, until it starts getting into practice, until people can actually implement it on a more wide basis, then I'd be very shocked if there was a change. It's not like resistance to or diminished resistances really change a whole lot to what your fleets like. Munins all of a sudden become a lot less effective because now you tank less. In fact, it's more so now you have take less Munins to alpha or less Eagles to alpha. But it'll honestly heavily depend on what people think is more effective, and then whoever does it the best, everybody else will copy them, like with all fleet combat.
And so
Do you
that's
think that really the people more affected by this will be the PvEers?
No.
Don't they rely on resist more so than just?
Yeah,
I think that
generally.
they do to a certain extent. I know there was actually a quote, I believe that Zuki's posted it somewhere in the Discord somewhere. Basically, CCP is aware that this may cause some PvE to be almost impossible or straight up impossible. I know one thing a lot of people were concerned about was level 5 abyssals. Losing 20% resistance in that. There's a lot of fits that are already very edge case that will no longer work. And I'd almost think that we're gonna get some crabs who don't pay attention to these changes going, and we see a lot of blingy abyssal Gilas, I'm sure, dying when this patch goes live, when their tanks are suddenly much worse.
Yeah, and I guess that's true. We're focusing more on the PvP aspect of it, just because that's I personally
We all
don't
do.
really run.
I don't care about
any
crabs,
PvE,
honestly.
anything.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think it's been pretty difficult for them to to crab the way that they'd like to crab for a very long time, or since the game's inception even. I mean, unless you're part of a big umbrella group, it's going to be pretty well impossible to get away with like going out doing your thing and not getting fucked like once a week anyway.
I'm actually
Right.
kind of curious. This might be jumping ahead, but I believe it's a related kind of thing. At the same time, they're buffing all Tech 1 battleships, faction hulls included, for a 10% increase to HP, and of course a 30% bonus to scan res. But I think the HP is the most important part in context to this discussion. I'm not sure how much that offsets the 20% resist nerf. They may in fact come out on top. I'm sure someone can do the math on that, but
I
For
think
some of the battleships doctrines that I've looked at, it's not really. It's a net, I guess, a slight loss, but it's not really a huge difference. It would have been a huge
Gotcha.
difference prior, pre-resist nerf, but uh it's kind of like the those ALOD fits you always used to see with like seven extenders, and you're like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever
Yeah.
seen. You don't have enough resistance spin because you just get shot through. Same thing, raw EHP doesn't ultimately matter, especially in a lot of battleship, maybe smaller scale battleship fights it'll matter, but for the battleship fights that I'll probably be a part of, or the larger scale ones where you start getting into the 50-60 battleship range, raw HP doesn't matter and it will continue to not matter.
It doesn't, but if you look at something like, for example, about the Munins with their ADC active have like 250k EHP. If we're looking at old school like slaved Max and stuff, the kind that Shadow Cartel and Snuff used to throw at each other in lowsec a couple years back, I'm sure everyone remembers that. Those had 250k HP just straight period. So we're already talking about something that is as tanky as the tankiest Munin is for 30 seconds to begin with. So I feel like yeah, I think it's a slight loss, but like everything else is getting drastically less EHP. Like I'm not sure what a Munin will get with an ADC now, but I'm assuming it's going to be quite a bit less than the 250k. Like 20% puts it down to almost 200 if it's not anywhere near that 250k.
Yeah,
Like I
it'd be
feel like
about
that definitely in comparison to the rest of the hulls, I think that
about
makes battleships
210.
quite a bit tankier. Yeah.
Well, and also some of the changes, and we'll get to those changes too, as far as like the subcaps, what they're changing with the battleships and things like that. And also, I don't know if you guys can hear, but it's like super storming in the background. It's apparently
You having
hailing
hail?
right now.
Oh,
I'm
I
gonna
had
shut my
hail
window real
earlier.
quick.
Uh-oh.
I thought you maybe you turn the fan on your mic or something.
He said I'm gonna shut my window.
Yeah, I
I
actually
needed ice
Did
for my
hail today?
drink.
81 here, Rain.
Yeah, it was 80 here too, and then I woke up to just like hail slamming off my apartment walls. It was terrible.
Wow,
Yeah, no, that's what's
crazy.
happening right
at?
now.
It was
Is
15
hail.
degrees today.
I'm in Michigan, so this is actually pretty wild for me.
Okay.
And then it
I'm in Georgia,
subsides a little
so
bit.
it's
It's
just
weird.
hot down here.
Anyways, so blazing that, I wanted to go back to this meta shift, and I kind of want to see like, Lords, because you run more of a smaller style fleet.
Oh yeah.
So what's that gonna do for your fleet? Because in smaller fleets, and I know we had Casper on here a couple weeks ago, and he talked about how every fleet member has like their own specific role, and I imagine even with smaller scale fleets, not just small gang, that is true. So what do you think this is going to end up doing to the smaller fleet fights? Like, I'm just going to say an arbitrary number like 40 versus 40 or something like that.
Um, I 40 versus 40. I'm not particularly certain. I'd say more like we tended to, from my perspective, the 40 versus 100 usually. So let's taking that as an example. I'd say the two main doctrines, taking two of our doctrines, Gillas and Abaddons, I think that we're actually in a better position. A lot of the strength in the Gillas is your snap targeting, basically being able to swap your full DPS kind of things very quickly. And with everything having less EHP, that shit's just going to die that much faster. The Gillas themselves do definitely they're losing obviously resists, but they have a built-in resist bonus to the hull, and a large part of the Gillas is that they're 100 MN, they have a low sig, and the range is a large part of us tanking it. We fought 30 versus 100 hurricanes and mopped the floor with them because we were out of the hurricane's range the entire time. No amount of EHP would change that. Just the fact that we'd be killing canes faster in this future meta would be helpful. So I think that's definitely a good thing. I think in terms of the wormhole meta, I'd say that's probably closer to more even fights, 40v40, 50v50. I'm not too positive on that, but I would say that especially as Leshaks ramp up to max damage, I'm not sure if you've seen, they tend to take pretty very large volleys out of hostile subcaps. So I'd say that that's definitely going to be, for the first time in most of the game, they're going to have more DPS than they can rep, especially with the changes to Fax being less cap effective. So I feel like you actually may have some situations where Leshaks will be volleying through the EHP with the EHP nerf potentially. So I'd say for the small size, I mean, it basically just makes things, I don't think it's going to change things much, except for in those lopsided fights where you have one side in a smaller size doctrine versus another side taking the usual null doctrines. I don't think the null
Sure.
doctrines are going to be, they're going to be basically less effective at the smaller scale, just because all of their doctrines are lower EHP and they're already less effective to begin with.
So essentially, what this so what you're saying, and I'm just saying this to clarify, is that this will actually make your doctrines that don't necessarily rely on huge numbers of lower EHP ships and lots of logistics to catch ships that are possibly dying. This is actually going to make your smaller doctrines stronger.
I would say, yeah, there's definitely so like smaller gangs in general are going to be stronger because when they're shooting individual ships, those individual ships are going to be a lot easier to kill. I would say that for FE personally, picking two of our doctrines, Gillas and Abaddons, like I said, Gillas will be. I just laid out the reasons why I think they're stronger, and Abaddons receive that bonus to EHP. And if we're shooting non-battle ships, the EHP difference is going to be, pretty. It's going to be even more in our favor after this. So I feel like stuff like Feroxes are just going to be. I don't know if it'll push Feroxes. I think at the nullsec level, it's still good to have a bunch of trash doctrines like Feroxes, but they're going to be. It's hard to say they'll be worse because they're already pretty useless in my opinion, but they'll be even less effective at the scale that we're fighting at. And I feel like, especially if more people swap to stuff like the Abaddons, they're buffing Conflag. Like we're gonna have Abaddons dealing like fucking 2k DPS with drugs and heat. Like that's insane.
Yeah,
Like
and so
that gets
that's
a
going to
lot
be
scarier.
yeah, that sounds terrifying actually. Like now I'm scared of smaller fleets. Oof, null sex. But I think the big thing that we're still gonna see like fleets of Feroxes from null blobs because
Yeah,
that
they're still
is
the most cost effective.
right, exactly. And maybe that material, the resource scarcity that they're introducing as well, as they continue to introduce that, those types of ships will become more costly, and we'll see some more niche doctrines show up than just the Feroxes. Like I know personally, I've always liked to run Hurricanes, and when you run them properly, they're pretty strong. But I also like the faction cruisers and stuff like that. I'd much rather that to say hacks online, which is what we've been accustomed to recently. So Loki, what do you think? Because I know you're so, and Blazing, you can chime in on this as well. Because I know you two, you are more into like hunting capitals than you are fleet fighting, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But this change affects those capitals in reducing the amount of HP they actually have, which would in turn, I would assume, also reduce the amount of time they have to get a proper response fleet on grid to fight you. What do you, Loki? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll definitely reduce the time needed to like kill a random riding ship that you find. That at the same time, though, like I don't know, dude. Like I don't know if that necessarily makes it like a good thing. Like groups that go around trying to just kill ratters, that's like that's not necessarily like elite gameplay. We'll say at its finest, like you're basically just ganking on a higher level. So yeah, it will make it a little bit easier to accomplish that, I suppose.
Well, it's not elite gameplay, but it is a common gameplay right now.
Right. I mean,
Yeah,
the
because
EHP.
there's nothing else to fight over.
I
Fair,
agree,
yeah,
but
fair
it's a
enough.
common
It's true.
gameplay right now.
Fair
That's
enough.
the
I mean,
point.
It's literally the only
majority of the
reason I
time-
ever bothered to fucking start doing those fleets is because there's nothing else to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I run the suites too, so like I'm not bashing, myself. I'm just saying like, yeah, it will make it a little bit easier for sure. Like we'll be able to maybe kill something if in those instances where like something was able to be saved in like half hull or something. I guess this would make it so that you could pretty much kill it before having to run away from the bad guy. But like, I don't know, dude. I'm not necessarily like in favor of the changes if that's what you're asking. Like at the same time, like things have kind of been nerfed in such a way that like I kind of feel like it'll all kind of shake out anyway. Like everything's relatively even. Hacks kind of suck a little bit more, but they suck little bit more across the board. Battleships suck a little bit less, but they're still kind of bad.
Well, yeah, because battleships are super slow.
Right.
Okay.
At least like they are buffing something that takes less skill points to get into, and so from like some perspective, you can make the argument that like it'll help younger players and players that don't have as many skill points kind of get into something that may be more meaningful or something like that. So I guess like there's a small win in that. I don't think that they're buffing it to a degree that makes it all that meaningful in my opinion. But again, like maybe there's something that we could pipe up that might change my mind.
So,
Sure.
at least me personally, looking at the changes in my perspective on the larger nullsec meta, if you notice that the only battleships that were ever used at all in recent memory in the nullsec meta are Mercurials and Nightmares, at least at the larger scale. And I feel like Nightmares, recently. Who the fuck's been flying
Maelstrom.
Megas
Wow.
recently?
Like in the last
Same,
what was
probably
it, a year and a half ago?
probably the same people who were flying Mercurials and Nightmares
And
still.
Nightmares
I mean, like the
back then
last
too, yeah.
six months to a year. Like for example, Skill Yourself. We did a lot of Nightmares, tested a lot of Nightmares back and forth
Skill
against
Yourself
them.
has been dead for a while.
Right.
Maelstrom.
I'm saying that in basically since battleships. I mean, no one's taken out a full size Mac fleet. Last I checked, anytime recently for any major fights. Not any major fights, but I feel like Nightmares get much stronger with this meta with the EHP changes because they remain largely unaffected. Like you said, it's a slight nerf, but not that much, and they're already strong enough to be used in hacks online. And I feel like that might actually make them be a more attractive fleet comp for
So
larger nullsec groups.
I want to mention for Big Bill the Boss that what he's talking about is coming. I just need you to be patient, Bill. Okay, just be a little bit patient because we're not just gonna stop at talking about patch notes. Because I really wish that I had. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. So let's. So we've got this in a way, and somebody said something in chat that I'm curious about as well. And basically it's Spolia Opima says, I don't get why CCP nerfing the module resistance instead of nerfing remote Logi rep amount. In this way, they are punishing the solo PvPers. What do we think about that? I guess that's kind of true, right?
I personally think it's the opposite.
I think
Someone
that
else wants to go first.
I think balancing the game around solo PvPers is a bad idea. That's like 1% of the gameplay. I'm sorry it affects you, but it sucks that way. But at the same time, it's the same thing. Same time I hear somebody mention an argument, it's like, oh, this change is bad because it hurts the little guys. Well, unfortunately, that's not a bulk of the player base there, friend.
It's also an N+1 game that you're playing, and so being solo inadvertently will hurt you just like because you're solo.
No,
So-
I still feel like, I mean, so I did solo PvP for 3 years. I still feel like solo PvP lives matter, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Because I mean, so when you think about it, you hear about all these great massive fleet fights, but really those are just some nerds sitting multi-boxing 5 accounts, pressing F1 on each and every one. Every time some dude actually thinking for himself broadcasts a target. Fleets are just in essence taking a small solo gang or whatever and scaling it up. So I still feel like solo PvP matters. And for example, I did solo PvP for 3 years. That's why I can fucking do Logi anchoring. I would say at least decently well and not panic or whatever the fuck people do. So solo PvP still matters. And yeah, sure, maybe not balancing everything around like the one solo PvP guy or balancing, that's like saying balancing around AT ships, right? You just can't do it. But
I
you
feel
still
the
have to
solo
go.
PvPers are more adaptable. They come up with some of the craziest fits that work amazingly for solo PvP. I think that any change is really, they seem to be the ones that are able to withstand almost any change.
To be clear though, we
No.
are talking about like we're not really talking about solo PvPers, right? Like we're talking about like small gangs. Is that what we're talking about when referring
Well, I
to
No,
think
solo.
Spolia mentioned
Folio
solo
mentions small-
PvPers specifically.
And I would
Big Miker, Finn, people.
myself, but I'm biased. I would argue that this is actually not punishing solo PvPers. I'd say this might be nerfing a little bit more of small games. Solo PvP generally tends to, by and large, there's some edge cases, fall into two different situations. You are one, you're in a fast kitey ship controlling range, and that's the ship you're flying, or two, you're flying a ship that's brawling, it's much rarer, and you're trying to do a lot of DPS. For example, the frigate level, Tyrannus. Tyrannus goes in, it burns its hostile target down, and it fucks right off before the blob lands. You can do similar stuff in old school Deimoses. New Deimoses are different. That's a whole different topic. But I would say that the EHP nerf, rather than nerfing reps, helps you because again, if you're kitey, like using Big Miker for example, flying around in a Vindy, like a lot of your or Nightmare or whatever, a lot of your range, a lot of your the way you mitigate incoming DPS from the gang is by moving, which isn't really affected much by the resist nerf. Like again, you don't see him face tanking a fleet in his Nano Vindy. It's way old school, but like you see him running around and keeping things at range and trying to split gangs and stuff. And I would say people who are trying to go in with a LGO going in with a Blaster Uranus, trying to go in and gank a Kikimora before this fleet lands. Again, same thing. I think this is a buff because the Kiki has less HP or whatever your ship is. It has less EHP for you to kill before you can just get the fuck out. So I'd say this is more of a buff to solo specifically. I'd say for small gangs, if you're doing like any kind of tinker thing, or if you have like I don't know, like 2 guardians and a couple ships or something, yeah, it's a bit of a nerf to that because it's a lot harder to tank hard, and fight the blob at the very, very small scale. Like the blob you can engage now is much smaller because it's outside of battleships, you're not going to tank nearly as well. So I'd say that it hurts that, but I'd say specifically solo, not really. I'd say it's a buff
I
from my
think
perspective.
right, they were kind of like that was kind of my point to you. Thing, so is that they're pretty much fucked to begin with. So like, how does this change anything? If you're in an Orthrus, kiting and waiting for things to run into you so that you, I mean, this doesn't really change anything, right? But if you're in a small group and all you have is like one simi and you're trying to sig tank a group of hack, that's probably going to be a little bit harder to do now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now it's going to be easier to kill the hack if it burns into you like an idiot. So that's a positive. But I mean, so it does change things. I don't necessarily know. Like, we'll have to see how it plays out. I'm not like all doom and gloom about the changes necessarily. It will change things from a certain perspective. We might have to switch up some doctrines, but whatever. It's still net plus one.
I know, buddy, you said you've been on Sissy playing around a bit. What modules are all affected? Because it lists 3 groups, but one group it didn't list that do affect resistances is damage controls, and they do affect resistance, but they're not listed as one of the ones they're changing. Do you know, is that just an omission or?
I would assume that it affects everything, no matter if it was listed or not.
Well, aren't the resistances on damage controls just in hull though?
No, it's across all 3.
It's everything. It's the largest is in hull, but it is across all 3.
12.5 to shields, 15 to armor, and then 40 to health.
Well, I mean it would completely delete that resistance on the damage control then.
It's not taking away 20%. It's taking,
I think
20% of what it is.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm really dumb.
Yeah,
So
if
like,
12%
Math
goes
is
to
hard,
like
it's okay.
10 or whatever.
So like a adaptive nano would be reduced to 12.32 instead of whatever it is. I can't remember.
I wonder if that's also gonna do. Okay, this is just increases, so it's not
From
gonna
15.4 down to 12.32 on
Gotcha.
an adaptive nano.
Did you look,
Yep.
or is that just napkin math?
I just did math, yeah.
On a
Okay,
side note,
I'm logging in to look.
didn't they just announce a minor buff to invulns a couple of patches ago or a week or 2 ago? I think they were moving invulns up a couple percentage points. So I wonder if that's related to this.
It is. I have some bombs to drop for all y'all.
So
if you're
that
curious.
is one thing about
Yeah,
it.
let's hear it,
I'm
Bunny.
very happy that they did decrease the bomb damage by the same amount that reduced the resists. I think that was smart.
I don't think that matters either. Honestly,
it would be a
I
wash?
think mass. Well, it's not really. They increased it to keep it on par with the reduction, and so it's basically like nothing happened. The only thing is the battleships have a little bit I don't know. It's weird because you can still probably wipe out certain fleet comps with with mass bombers like people do anyway. At least the people who are really good
That's
at
what I'm
them.
thinking. I think it's gonna be a wash. There's gonna be really no change from the bombers how they affect their
But do
enemies.
do we think that instead of seeing like for instance an adaptive nano or a damage specific hardener, we'd see like an extra plate in some of these ships, like specifically battleships? Like just thinking of say a Megathron, I would think it makes sense just to buff the general HP of it, like to fit it with more HP in general. That way it
Or
just
maybe
takes
the
those damage.
energized armor platings or the layer
The
platings.
layered
maybe
ones you're
get
talking
more,
about.
yeah, maybe those become more popular.
I don't know about those. I think the fits will stay the same. I will say that the gap between slaved, or what are they called now, amulets or something,
Yeah.
amulet versus non-amulet tank ships, and of course the shield equivalent. I think that gap obviously will get larger because the more raw HP you have, the better those ones that buff your HP are. There's a couple fits where you want to swap out any NAM for plate, like you were saying, with the extra EHP that comes from slaves. So definitely, I think that is a huge thing. I don't think it's enough of a change to warrant fitting a plate or a layered, maybe on supers. I don't know, over the extra resists though.
You're thinking about this kind of sideways. It doesn't change. So think about it like this, right? All resistances across the board have been like lowered, so you're going to get the same amount of resistance no matter what. So I wouldn't say necessarily that there's a gap in between slaved and non-slaved armor battleships. The only difference is it's gonna be the same thing no matter what, right? You're just gonna have more EHP with the less resistances, or less EHP with the less resistances. There's not a new gap there.
Right,
'cause
everything's
it's-
No, it's
everything's
it's
moved down to a
proportional.
different.
Yeah,
So-
it's proportional. Yeah.
Right, you're just on a different plane now, but you're still on the same playing field. It's the same fucking
like
game.
you run the numbers and look at those two ships prior to the nerf, and then look at those two same things post nerf. I guarantee you that's the same distance between those two things, if that makes
Yeah, absolutely. It's proportional. It went
In
down equal
subcaps-
proportions. So yeah.
in subcaps this doesn't matter. So like the resistance nerf, yeah, it's unfortunate, but the same, well, not unfortunate, I mean, it depends on how you want to look at it. In subcaps this isn't a huge deal because you're not as much as it is in supers. I kind of just lost my train of thought halfway through.
That's okay.
It happened. I think Rain's right though in the subcap side of things. This is going to be much more difficult for Logi on subcaps. It's going to be near impossible.
Well, that's the idea.
Like to save like a ratting super carrier that get tackled, they're going to get just burned down before anybody can come save them. I think that is true. I think that'll happen.
So here's the
at least
real
more of a chance at
question:
it,
why does CCP hate Logi?
I don't think they hate Logi. I think it's just
I know. It's
I think
just-
they
it's
hate
just drama,
Camp's
dude.
leader.
It's
Why
just
do they
drama.
hate FCs who need to like fucking yell and beg people to get into fucking Logi ships in the
Serious.
that's gonna be the more annoying thing.
Yeah, I
is
know,
now
I
you're
know,
getting
right?
more of a-
Right. Now,
fuck
All
so-
fleets have to have 20% more Logi now, so it's gonna be like
They
50
need-
minutes.
We really need to
Hour.
get Logi on like every kill mail that the thing that it reps got on to get people to fucking hop into these things. It's holy fuck.
well, and I don't think that is what stops people from flying Logi. I think that, and Rain, don't let this go to your head or anything, but I think that flying Logi.
It's really hard.
I
And it
think
takes a
that
lot of brain
it's
power. And only the
Exactly.
best can do it. Thank you.
it takes a lot more work than just anchoring, pressing F1, and occasionally pressing your ADC if you're running one of the dozens of hack fleets that fight each other in New Eden. So it's a harder thing, and people just don't really want to do it.
It's
And
pressure.
higher likelihood that you
it-
get shot at too. And yeah,
Well,
it's-
if you screw up, Logi screws up, the fleet dies.
Yeah,
Right. If an F1 monkey screws up, he dies.
right.
What was the numbers you said earlier about damage controls?
So
For
like
Tech 2?
12.2 or something.
No, what were they
I-
originally?
It's a
Pre-nerf.
Say it
great,
again.
great
I will say my
question.
favorite thing flying Logi is like even when you fuck up, you just say sorry a bunch. Your FC rarely yells at you. It's
Yeah.
so nice.
So currently it's
Plug in the logic.
12.5% for shield, 15% for armor, 40% for structure.
Damage controls didn't change.
Okay, I didn't figure they would.
They
'cause
weren't
that would
listed. That's why I
be-
asked. I was curious. I thought maybe you just knew off the top of your head. You didn't have to look them up. I apologize.
No, I pulled it up because I was looking at something else too. But what is adaptive invols? If you're logged in currently,
I mean, it's
It
it's
is.
me you're talking to, so I'm not logged in at all. You know this is correct.
I don't understand why you still get but mad about it then. But whenever I point these facts out,
They're -30. Adaptive inbuilds are
okay, so they're at what 40% for whatever. But
negative
yeah,
30%. Yeah.
So do you think this will bring back scriptable armor hardeners,
no,
unlike caps? Why
No.
not?
because they use a lot of capacitor already,
And that's already
and
that's
now
being
it's going to
touched too. Yeah.
change. If we're already talking about if we're switching to capitals and the implication for that, then you're already starting to move. So the biggest strength between like currently between supers and armor supers is armor supers fit passive, and then capacitor warfare doesn't matter as much. But for shield supers, you run active hardeners, so you don't really want to eat up any more of your cap that you now only get one injector for. Than you already have to, especially now that if everybody's going to start switching to more of an active super or Titan fit.
So do
So-
we want to jump right into that, or
I was gonna say I did hear that cap injectors are now limited, or was it cap
Y-
boosters are now
You can
limited?
only have one cap booster
Let's-
per
Cap-
So
capital.
yeah, so
Let's
one
jump
capital.
into it.
I'm not sure. I don't think that affects the faxes as much as people are thinking. Like Nanazus have what 5 mids,
I
one
would say
capital, and 4 heavies is not. I don't know. I think the official fit's actually pretty similar to that for wormholes right now.
I think my Nanazu fit, my solo Nanazu fit that stayed in the north because I couldn't be bothered to move it, is I think it's a capital battery or something like that, and then 5 or 4 heavy. So you're right, and ultimately it's shit you'll get around because 3200s can still be put into heavy injectors.
I'm just gonna say
Yeah.
it is capital capacitor boosters.
Yeah, it is
limited.
just capital. I feel like
You put heavies in.
if you look at the opposite way, I almost feel like this is actually a nerf to shield ones. Like a lot of Minakawa fits were dual capital, whereas apostles have like a capital and some heavies, or Ninos have but like the shield ones didn't really. They had to have their double injectors, their double capital injectors. I feel like that hurts shield trio facts a lot more than it hurts armor ones because they can just spread out with more heavy boosters if needed.
And I don't think that that's as big of an issue as it seems. Just simply because, and I might catch some flack for saying this, but faxes are pretty oppressive in the current meta as far as like two triage on grid for some of our fleets is enough to hold the entire fleet, where we don't have to bring anybody else in Logi except for those two faxes.
So you're saying it's a good thing to incentivize armor facts over shield facts, or you mean facts in general?
I think it's a good thing to kind of try to dial down faxes, but what you've got to understand and what everybody has to understand is that dialing down faxes isn't just pressing a button and saying, okay, faxes are nerfed now. They have to do it gradually because these are still, even though they're not a super carrier, they're not a Titan, they're still a valuable asset in any fleet, in any alliance. Like having the right number of faxes available is huge. So just turning that off turns it into where we just have these fights that are decided before they even start. Because again, flying Logi, including fax, sometimes takes more skill than actually just flying a DPS ship. So if you consider that like bringing in a fax is just the end of the line, nerfing that is fine. And also you've got to think that in some of these larger scale super and Titan fights that we've had in the last few years, we've seen that the people who are using shield supers have, I think shield supers at their current level are better than armor supers, just because of the amount, just because of the reps, the way they come in under tie-dye, where they start at the beginning of the cycle rather than the end. And I think this is a good step to reducing that a little bit. just by making it harder for those ships to exist in the wild. That was a lot of things to say all at once.
Okay, I kind of see where you're coming from as far as that. I definitely agree that there's a large way to go to deal with, like you said, the fact that shield reps are front loaded and armor reps are not front loaded is definitely an imbalance across everything, not just facts.
Yeah, also facts are huge. Like there's no reason like there should really be a balance update to the size of ships. And
That was
this
supposed to happen.
I'll say, yeah,
super-
you know what the funny thing is? The story was CCP said that faxes were the first of the new capital balancing thing. And they were saying these are the actual size of caps. Don't worry, the other caps will be upscaled appropriately next iteration. And of
then they
course, we
never
all know
were.
how CCP iterations go.
Right.
Never
Okay.
happened.
So since we're talking about the capital changes, I've gone ahead and put them up on the screen here, just to give kind of an overview. The big things is that CCP is trying to change the capital ecosystem to where supercarriers and titans are moving away from being all-purpose damage to more of a capital and structure killing platform, which I personally really like. Now, the one big thing that they're not talking about, and I'll mention that here in a second. So some of the changes that they're putting in there are that the support fighter tubes, so these are dromies and sirens, are being removed from supercarriers. This does
Isn't that
give
also Space Superiority Fighters as well?
no,
No,
SS
Space
No, no.
Superiority
are
Arrays are
considered
light.
light
Just
fighters.
just the utility one.
So this is just dromies and sirens. So for anybody who's not familiar, dromies are the ones that slow down other ships. They're the webbing ones, and sirens are the tackling ones. It's important that I mention that because it's important that everybody knows that I know things about supercarriers and fighters. I promise. I'm a professional supercat pilot. And the second thing is that the XL plates, so the extra large plates and extenders that that these ships can fit, are having a massive reduction. Well, are they massive? What's the percentage on them now? Reduced to 200 for supercarriers, and reduced to 300
500.
for Titans.
500 for Titans. And I'm not sure when supercarrier.
So probably 300 or 400 for supercarriers. So anyway, it's at least
I'll look.
100% nerf.
So Super Curious is 400% at present.
Okay. So the supercarrier is getting cut in half for their plates, and then the Titans are being reduced by 200%. Also, the long-range heavy fighter explosion radius. So this is for the fighter bombers.
This is long range fighter application, which is already kind of bad
Is
as
it?
it is.
Is it
Yes.
application like the missiles on them?
No.
Or the
I
bombs?
So all
they
fighters use
calculate
the missile calculator.
They use missile calculation. So like if you
Okay.
try to shoot a afterburning, we'll say Kikimora, because you can't really shake a stick without hitting one at this point. If you try to use long range fighter bombers on a Kikimora, you won't apply because they use the same calculations as like missiles do. And so
Gotcha.
it's already currently in the way it is. Long range fighters don't apply to anything cruiser down really anymore, unless you use a shitload of dromies and stuff to help application. So I don't really see how this was super necessary, or if they're trying to push the battleship meta forward more, or what their issue here was.
Well,
But
and Big Bill the Boss, in a strange streak of saying things that I completely agree with, which is really weird for Big Bill the Boss. Like, kudos to you, my man. He's saying that they're trying to bring a proper chain of escalation, which is something that I've been talking about for probably the last year that I've played Eve, to where it's not just you instantly go from, a tackled crab to super carriers and titans, and that I think is a good thing. But we'll talk about that too. Another important note on this one is the short range heavy fighter speed is increased by 50%. Now this, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is literally just making the fighters faster so that they get on a target faster.
pretty much.
With dromies being removed from supercarriers, the speed increase isn't really going to
the
matter.
Support tube. So it's dromies, Cenobites, Scarabs, and Siren. It's all 4. The support tubes going away.
You just didn't know
can't
about the other
launch 'em.
2 because nobody fucking uses them.
Yeah, what even do
unless
those
they're
things do? Like
Nuding
you
and
So
tracking
scarabs,
detection?
scarabs are fucking ECM fighters, which I'm really glad those really never took off because that'd be the next level AIDS that fucking pissed me
Yeah,
off
no
Yeah,
kidding.
no
Yeah.
kidding,
infinite
dude.
degree because chimeras have a bonus to them, and that was the last thing I'd ever need in my life is to be pointing something and a chimera jump in and jam me for infinite cycles. But
Yeah, Cenobites, Newt, Dramies, Web, Scarabs,
Okay,
ECM,
fair,
and
fair,
Sirens.
yeah.
fair.
So
And then the fighter base size is being increased for Anne and Wyvern. Not a huge deal.
But we don't know how
Um,
much, right?
and
it's
then
it's probably to make it so it's on par with being able to carry 4 squadrons of heavy fighter. That
right.
would
Okay.
be my
Long
That makes sense
overdue.
because the Aeon's pretty tight.
And then of course the capital capacitor boosters are limited to 1 per ship. And this one I'll have to ask about because I don't really know. The only ship that I know of that would fit more than 1 capital capacitor booster, maybe an apostle, but
Oh,
also a Rourke wolf, perhaps.
I don't think so.
I don't
Confirm,
think so
deny.
either. I don't know. I don't think they did they even put one on
Let's look at some
Mine
Delve
has one, I
Rourke wolf
think.
kill
Capital though.
models.
Yeah.
Was it? Okay. I don't
So
use that one. So I don't know.
before you start pulling up Zkill, do me a favor and take your pointer and highlight bonuses to XL plates and extenders. That line for me, and I'll go on a huge tangent about why that fuck.
Okay. Well, I can't necessarily do that, but pretend that I did.
Alright. So this whole XL plates and extenders thing, uh, that's a unless you actually know what the numbers were, familiar with how much bonus that actually is, that doesn't never really matter to anybody. Well, it did because it's a shitload of EHP, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about. Resistances applied to EHP is where you get all your tank from. Um, with whenever they along with the resistance nerf, they also and gave you a HP nerf with that. So I'd like to point out whenever I logged in today and looked at my personal Titan fit and my personal Super fit, they have the same amount of EHP now, which
Your
is a
Titan
little
and your
bit spooky.
Super have the same
Yes.
amount of VHP?
Yeah, my Erebus has 22 million, I think, and my Aeon when full tank fit is 25. Which is
Jesus.
interesting. So then I started looking at other Titans. Avatars are pretty much on the same field, but you know what kind of was weird to me, and it kind of comes from the culture of armor Titans using passive hardeners and shield Titans using active hardeners. Ragnarok still have an ass load of EH if you fully shield tank them, which is wild in my opinion. Like this is kind of just pushes the shielded super meta even harder than it already was with the way that shield facts reps land and capital capacitor transfers. You'll never really nude out as a shield super if you have facts on grid and all that shit. So whenever you look at EHP amounts for shield supers and shield titans, it's roughly doubled now with no links, no heat, and active hardeners, which is pretty staggering. So then I tried to do that with my armor titan, and it doesn't come close. So
Well, that kind of
expect to
sucks.
see him. Yeah.
So I wish we'd have tied up this first, but what I want to touch on as well, so the removal of the support fighter tubes with the addition of the heavy fighter tube, I don't want to reveal any information that's like classified, but in your opinion, like do we still run the same kind of fighters? Like, is that gonna be? Are we gonna run 4 heavies now? Are super carriers only gonna be used for like structures and shooting dread bombs?
No, because the best thing about super carriers is adaptability, and you'll still carry, especially now that they're kind of fixing Aeons and Wyverns having ridiculously small drone bays. You can still use SS and you can still use Iron Gs and shit like that to apply to to apply to subcaps. So you're not really getting rid of all of the problem, but you're still, I guess the short answer to your question is no. I don't think it'll really change the way we use them. You'll still have some of the escalation possibility in maybe in super fights, because now if you get dread bombed halfway through your super fight and you're not fit to take it right away, then you're going to have a bad time. But for us, no, it's not really going to change anything. You just don't use sirens and dromies now. So whenever your FCs tells you to load up triple light siren dromy, they're just not going to say the siren dromy part. They're still going to say triple light.
Triple lane, and then okay, cool. So then, so we touched on that. So I just want to, now Lords, do you guys have supers at all? Do you run super carriers, super caps?
We have a very surprising amount of supers and titans, which we never use.
Okay.
We basically don't get.
Tell
like,
me
we-
more
our-
about the supers and titans you have.
Where do you keep
What are
that?
their names? Can you tell me the names of some of the people who might have the most of them?
Lord Servant has a Moloch, 2 Revenants, a Komodo, and the Angel Titan, but that's on CC.
I
Eh,
see.
well, that's a-
But no, I'm not. What was the question again?
where do you
There
keep
wasn't a question. It was
who
just
owns
it was just me asking you about titans and supers.
We have them. We don't use them. Like I said, we're way too small for that kind of stuff. And honestly, it's not particularly the way it is right now. They're not particularly interesting, and there's nothing very special about them. I just kind of for example, any super carrier Titan I see with capital rings on it, I just assume it was free because that means it was worthless when it was built, and it's worthless still. Like anything with large rigs is actually meant something when it was built, but anything capital just doesn't really matter. There's not worth really doing anything with at our scale. We're already at the point where no single alliance in our area can or will fight us. So dropping supers and titans would only encourage more people to come in and blob, which we would need you supers for. And of course, we're nowhere near the biggest super group, so we're just not going to bother doing
Sure.
that. We'll keep our stuff to the sub cap and minor capital scale.
So and then the rest of these changes kind of trickle in with the long range heavy fighter explosion radius increase. Again, that's more geared towards them wanting supers to be more used for capital killing, which makes sense. Like that's, in my opinion, that's exactly what super capital should be for. So that chain of escalation exists, but I mean, you could still blob out the sun with super caps and call it
So
a day.
sirens aren't going away, but did you see it?
Oh, Villy's here.
Your carriers to be used a lot more within a super fleet. They have like a wing of your regular carriers carrying
So-
those. Do you think that'll be a thing or not?
Super carriers and titans have gone back and forth between either supers or titans being more powerful at any given moment. All the way back to like the very first one. The very first one, titans were overpowered and supers were much better, and then it flip flopped and it's gone back and forth. I personally am of the opinion that pushing supers and titans into an only capital role is exactly the opposite way to go as far as having more of them die, having more of them used.
So Villy is here. Villy, welcome back to Trash Talk Tuesday. I imagine you have some things to say. What's on your mind?
I've seen you a lot recently, dude. Are you bored or something? I've seen
Yeah, I'm
Billy
not-
pings every day.
It's like he's-
I don't have a job all of a sudden. Well, I do have a job. I don't actually have to go show up at it anymore. So it definitely opens up some free time in my life, let's say.
Yeah, right.
Should be a streamer now, like every other FC.
So
True
talk to me,
story.
Villy.
I actually investigated streaming like 6 or 8 months ago, but the internet connection where I'm at isn't good enough to stream.
I'm gonna start streaming like the worst PoE you've ever seen. I think that's gonna be my thing.
I would watch that.
I'm so bad at PoE, dude, but it's also like fucking
Yeah.
hilarious.
I just actually got off a fleet. We like whelped some ruptures up in Horde space. It was good fun.
Sweet.
Yeah, I heard about that. So what do you make of these super changes, Villy?
I heard about your ruptures. It was big news on the. What do I think about super changes? I think they're pretty good.
Well, yeah, because your Titans tank way more than everybody else's now.
Is it really that much more?
It is really that much more, dog. Have you looked at EFIT or Sissy today?
Yeah, I've been tracking what the numbers were for like a month. So,
Oh,
but
man.
but how do I put this? Shield HP versus armor HP. It's always one of those like those liars statistics. Because when you're nuded out, those shield hardeners are on, and everybody knows it. Right? Like it looks nice on paper to say, oh, my Komodo's got 400 million HP, but the reality of that is no, it's not how it actually works.
But even with the Nirvana implants and like completely passively shield fit, wasn't it still fucking ridiculous?
there was like some weird fit that people had with a levy that was like 70 mil or something. Nirvana's pre.
Right, right.
But to be honest, if you have a 50-man capital fleet, you're going to have 10 people who don't have their hardeners on anyway. So, it just the law of averages of stupid.
Usually people can turn
Yeah.
their hardeners on.
In the
It's
past,
just
Yeah,
more
no,
so.
I would say if you're flying a Titan and don't have the brain cells to rub together to fucking hit the hardener button, then I
You
don't
guys
really
say
want you in
that?
a Titan.
No, you guys say that like people do that in their fucking Munin. You think they're gonna do that in their Titan? No.
I
That's why
absolutely
expect
everyone.
them to do
That's
that.
why everyone has a
People
fast.
who have multiple Titans and been doing it forever that are dumb.
You should be your FC should be smart
they're gonna
enough to
forget.
tell you to turn on your hardener.
People, and how many
Well,
people
the thing
don't
is,
listen
like
to
in
FC?
Munins and many other ships, like you have capacitor issues with your hardeners, etc. With like,
People
your
lie about their
reg or whatever
skills,
else.
Also,
It's like you.
difference in losing a Ragnarok to a Munin, so pretty sure people pay attention a little more about that.
I'm sure they should. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I guarantee there's some that don't.
You also have a lot more time in between getting shot with no hardeners and dying in a Titan and a Munin. So even if you don't have your hardeners on, you'll notice and turn them on once you start taking damage.
All you have
So-
in big groups. Think about it. The last few capital fleets you had, how many people were like wandering off in the wrong direction at some point, not paying attention,
All
not lining,
bumping,
not doing
okay.
things? They're all out there.
Yeah, we just say
On
they
our
bumped.
side, your
Let's
side.
see,
Oh yeah, that's what they did.
Sorry,
I could've-
SC, I
just
bumped
could've
so
kept
hard.
moving. Nobody did anything stupid besides NC aligning another Fortizar wrong.
Yikes.
Mm,
So one thing
I
I
would
do want
like
to
to
touch
go out on a
on.
limb and say that I don't anchor any Fortizars, so that wasn't my fault.
I'm very curious because nobody seems to like. I haven't seen anybody talk about the impact that these changes are going to have on Rorquals, but I pulled up 5 random Rorqual kill mails from 5 different alliances, and 4 of them, they have 2 capital capacitor boosters on them.
That is both the test and Imperium standard fit.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Is
sure.
it?
ours
I
is
didn't know
too.
that. I didn't know how they exactly how they're fit. I don't know. They're more will die. Actually, more probably won't die because didn't the minerals get all fucked up and they don't? People are complaining because they can't use them in the belts or.
Well, I
the
mean,
anomalies.
they can definitely use them.
Well,
So
it's not lucrative to do it anymore. I guess.
well,
So
it's,
just
I
in the
mean,
night
it's more
belts.
Yes, it
lucrative than
is.
setting in a station and doing nothing.
It's more lucrative because it's still AFK.
Right.
Oh,
It's,
okay.
you get
that
less money,
aspect of
but
it,
it's
yes,
still.
yes, yeah, I get.
But you're not gonna have
well-
like 10 of them in a bell doing anything super constructive.
Exactly. That's my point. Is that you don't have these groups of 8 or to 10 of them hitting the belts because those rocks are a lot smaller or whatever now.
I mean, unless you got like a really solid fucking hunting fleet, like 100 something dudes, like I don't know, you can try to tackle more than that might work out for you, but generally you're gonna end up only killing like 1 or 2 by the time the response fleet shows up anyway.
Well, they're all
It's
bots
only
anyway. They're just gonna wipe off.
capital cap boosters are limiting to 1, right? Because I think there was people on the test
Yes.
server saying that
Yeah.
if you had a capital one on, you couldn't use the other ones also. It might have just been a bug though. So
Well, but I.
do you know, Philly, if that's what they meant by it?
What was the question? Sorry.
They said they're limiting 1 capital cap booster. Is that so you can put heavies on still, right? Or is it just 1 cap booster per
It is
capital?
only capital capacitor
Okay.
boosters.
I think people on the CC were having issues with it, so wanted to double check.
Well, maybe it's heavies.
I'm checking it right now.
I know
The
there
dev
was.
blog only said 1 capital, but when I also read it the first time, I read it wrong and was this horrible. When the Nazu fit?
I would be super happy if it didn't include heavies, but
Yeah.
or if you could only fit 1, like no heavies, no.
So I can
Extra
fit on my Erebus a capital and a.
Can
And
you run them?
Try undocking though, Blazing.
Oh, standby.
Yeah. And he said there was an issue with that.
But
So
what
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
kind of.
4 heavies or something instead.
Yeah, 2 modules. Yeah, nope. You can only use 1 capital booster.
I
One
don't know
capital.
if
So I
that's
Try
think that's
putting 2
probably a
heavies on them.
bug
both, see if that
or
works.
No,
Too
I think
many
that's
modules
intended.
of a group. Yeah.
Okay,
Oh.
perfect. So they did it. Cool.
I would say that you should try to get them to make sure they clarify that because the dev blog
Yeah.
doesn't make it seem like
Can I do it while it's offline? No, I cannot.
Well, that can't
Can you put 2
be.
heavies
Can you
on it?
refit it in space, Blazing?
So
I don't know. Let me look. It depends on if one of the sissy residents want to steal my nest urns.
So wait, the effectiveness of heavy cap boosters versus capital, though, it's much
Well,
less.
you can put a
yes?
3200
Well,
in
think
heavy
what
one of
is
them.
the NC dot apostle fit redline?
I have no idea.
It has no capital cap boosters on it. It's all heavies. Same with PL.
How does DJ know this, but you don't?
Well,
Because
because I
Redline
don't
doesn't-
fly faxes.
I think we're getting a little bit out of my interesting conversation, so I'm gonna drop off. Thank you all for having me.
Oh, you don't want to talk about
Take care.
subcaps next? Rip. Okay.
Subcaps.
Yeah.
Loki the Loki, dude.
That's the
Did I-
next.
Yeah.
That's
Did
the
I
next
miss
topic.
interesting
So you
trash
can-
talk on Trash Talk Tuesday at the start of the show, or
No. We've just been talking about the patch notes.
We can
Oh,
get
really?
some good trash
Yeah.
talk going if we want.
There's only sometimes it's trash talk. We really just it's kind of
I mean, we can talk trash about Tappy's numbers last night in Fleet if we really compared
Yeah,
to the
that was supposed to
PLNC
be some-
numbers.
That was supposed to be just some easy shit I did last night. Form a fleet, fight another
I was
Russian
really
fleet.
excited to
What
get
the
in a
fuck?
good brawl with you guys.
Yeah, no,
By
me
the
too.
way, if you were curious, you can refit them in space, so I don't know what the fuck is going on.
I feel like that's probably a bug, right? I don't
what
think
is
that's
the bug? Is
intended.
the question, Redline?
The
So
fact that
the error
you-
message says you can't undock because too many modules of a certain group is the error. So
Yeah, our numbers last night were fucking terrible. I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Is it
I
like
mean,
just your deployment you think is
Well-
caused, or do you think it's just in general for your
well, it's a jump
alliance?
clone staging where people don't have most of their shit yet. Like it's it takes a while to get people in the zone. Wasn't
Yeah,
a ton
of course.
Wait, where are you guys staging at now?
Wicked Creek?
C006
Okay.
Cog and Wicked
Wicked-
Creek.
It's been a while though. Like it's been like a week.
Yeah, but we haven't like it's only opposite of actually going into there. Just been kind of like fun
Greg
roams
said
and
it,
stuff. Like
didn't
we
you?
don't have like actual like heavy content into there yet.
or,
So
like,
it's
trying
it
to
makes sense.
toast an iHub and ruptures.
Ruptures are
Yeah.
good. Don't be
I don't know. We
hating.
had fun with them, man. It was good.
Ruptures are a good doctrine.
And now we'll welcome Seto to the show as well. Welcome,
Steak
Seto,
man himself.
the steak man himself, our resident hero.
I have a beef with Seto. He let me fucking face tank all those stupid brave battleships in the Wolverine fleet whenever I helped him with. The fuck was that, Richard?
Why'd
It's
you?
probably just because I'm a bad anchor, but like, come on, it's not his actual
Yeah.
name.
Richard?
It's
What
a,
the
it's
fuck?
a, it's a. Never mind. It's a quote.
It's a meme or something, probably.
Yeah.
That was a good man.
He was in-
CEO
he was in
of
a-
my heart.
Icky Tursas and Zarmazads, and I still got shot to death.
Well, yeah, because like people like that's a lot of the people see PL and NC ticker and they're like shoot them. Like I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, but it's
Shoot
Seto. He's
PL.
he's the legacy deserter. Like, shoot him first.
Still they
Would you
they
call it
see
deserter
PL.
though? I don't know
don't
if
know.
I'd call it deserter.
Well, did you desert them?
No.
The war was over.
I'd like to think that I left on good terms.
You look fine.
I don't know. Okay, Billy says you left fine.
Yeah, like I still have a lot of friends.
Things can always go better, but like it's part of the life of
Hold
leaving.
up.
You just
This
it
is
never goes
Trash Talk
perfect.
Tuesday. Let it
Oh,
out, Billy.
I'm sorry. Hold on, Seto. You piece of shit. I've had enough of your.
God, you can't even trash talk.
Yeah, I know.
Oh
I'm
my
sorry about.
God.
Dude,
Basically,
I was
Canadian.
waiting.
I have-
I was about to
I
clip
have
it
some
and
trash
everything.
talk for
I was
Seto.
at the-
Dude is Canadian, like level 5.
Seto,
Yeah,
He's
I know.
Canadian. He's too nice, dude.
Seto is
Dude,
literally scum of the earth. Okay,
Dude,
like
some tactical
100%.
supremacy. Dude, some tactical supremacy guy in the fucking patch notes thread called me a piece of shit for these changes today, and I was like, "Oh boy, you mad?" Like, I
Yeah,
was
why
like-
did you make these changes, dude? What the fuck?
It's all your
Yeah.
fault.
But
totally.
anyway, Seto is absolute scum of the earth because when I was in Goons, I brought a rookie fucking FC and some MOAs up, and I was like, "Hey Seto, you want to fight some MOAs or whatever?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'll fight some MOAs and just cruisers, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, just bring some cruisers along, have a little fight." This motherfucker rolls up with like 50 fucking combat Lokis and wipes
was
out
those
this
are
entire
cruisers.
fleet.
It was a cruiser, dude.
And
That's all I
then
care about.
It
and then
is a
has the
cruiser.
balls to say it was a cruiser, dude. You didn't specify Tech 1. I'm still
Didn't.
pissed at you for that, Seto. By the
You
way, I'm
didn't,
still
Redline.
pissed.
I mean, at the
Hey,
end of
there's
the
Come
no
on.
day,
honor among thieves, dude.
at the end of the
If-
day, you were a goon, so there's no honor in killing goons. It's just
Look,
kill
The
'em.
fact that you ended up in NC still surprises the shit out of me.
why does that surprise you?
Fighting Redline was like one of my favorite things to do during the whole
really-
Janning
heard-
campaign.
I can't really speak on the red line poach. That one wasn't mine. Pittsburgh was mine. I worked really hard on that.
I think brother Bob would tell a different story there, Blazer.
You know what? And Bob would be fucking wrong now, wouldn't he? I asked Pittsburgh right after he joined, who did he PM first, asking to if it was cool if he apped. It was so.
Hey, you know,
sued me.
Bandwidth is joining NC.dot.
Yes, yes.
Who?
Bandwidth.
Bandwidth,
Who's
guy
that?
who got the
Elite
PL Revenant
PL
AWOX.
Revenant Slayer.
Yeah,
Oh. Is
former
You remember
Habit
Wrath Rage?
member.
is he old broski or is that someone else I'm thinking?
The old Habit.
I'm thinking it's
Band- Bandwidth-
He was the guy who like set up the big BL bait bomb dread thing. It
And
was
didn't have
it
enough
caused
cap
the
to jump in.
yeah, they caused the elite Grath Telekin Rage that we all listen to every once in
No
a few
less.
years.
No less than
really?
12 Black Legion spies.
Yeah, that was him.
That's fantastic, dude. I heard that for
Even
the
linked
first time
out his
like
app.
a week ago.
It was like, what kill are you most proud of? And he linked the fucking Revenant.
They didn't set you up.
Fantastic.
This ain't the fucking mob.
So you had a good choice quote from that too last night, Billy.
Which one?
Cancer rotting this alliance. when
Oh
you
yeah,
joined.
that's my
Yeah,
favorite
what
Rush
was all
thing in
that
a
rage
while.
about? Jesus.
I was
I
getting
heard about
annoyed.
that
We had
one
like
from a mile
we had like
away.
450 people online, like 100 fleet. I'm like, you fuckers. Like,
I
come
know,
on.
I know that feel. I know exactly how that feels.
It's like I know there's like another 100 people that are just like waiting to come, but it's like, nah. It's like I don't know if I want to go
Waiting
on
for
fleet
crabs to
tonight.
go that green, dude.
I would like to make some money. I've had a little rough week. Let me have a glass of wine. I'm gonna work, take some spot. We're gonna have a good time. Like, you fucker, come in fleet. We're gonna have like a fun fight.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm good. I'm good. And a week
You
later,
just
it's like,
gotta
why
ping.
is there no U.S. time zone content?
Dude, you just gotta ping PL and NC
Didn't you like
to
get
where
a big
to work.
size rupture fleet today though?
I had like 70.
Yeah.
You just gotta use the
least you
PL and
pinged,
NC
what,
name,
once?
Billy, in your pings, and then people will
Yeah,
come
that's true.
and murder us.
If they
posted-
know we're there, they'll want to kill us for sure.
And SH told me about that timer. I'm like, cool, yeah, I'll post a timer. I'll just go fight Razor. It'd be like some chill shit I do tonight. And then I posted and took a nap, and I woke up. I have like 45 fucking pings. Like, Villy's coming to fight you. So then we formed, and then you didn't. Went all the way to Atioth, and you didn't fight me.
Yeah.
And it's after you said I drive girls away on open comms. Like, I don't know if you just don't like me. Like, what's going on, dog?
What do you mean?
Oh yeah, I
You
did
drive
that,
girls
yeah.
away.
No.
I need to know more.
Bunny is like the eye
You know what's
candy. Plus, he
crazy?
has a dog, so
No,
every
the
time
dog
he
is
doesn't
formed.
show
The
up.
dog
and
is
Manic
eye
is the
candy.
eye
Invictus
candy on
candy.
open
formed.
comms.
I am not like. Don't call dogs eye candy. What the fuck? You
Eye
fuck-
candy
It's
plus
a
dog.
it's a husky. Huskies are the
Invictus
greatest.
formed
Victus,
Oh
man.
yeah, that fucking name. I
Yikes.
love it. We
What were you
shouldn't
saying,
jade.
Seto? Sorry.
Well, since it's Trash Talk Tuesday, Invictus formed 120 people a few days ago for a timer, and Tess couldn't even form 100 last night.
Yikes.
When was the timer?
It was like last week, and probably I don't remember exactly, but they had like 120 tunes alone in their fleet or whatever.
Cool. Like, I'm not. It's not like we can't form 100 dudes again ever. It's like it's just
No,
like,
no, I'm not saying that. I was just. I'm
No,
trying to go
dude,
along with the
It's gotta
theme here.
build
I
the
think you're done,
narrative.
dude. I think
yeah.
you're
we're
done.
cooked.
I think you're cooked.
We're
like
cooked.
I think you
This
should
is
just
it.
close the doors.
Billy.
I did,
Billy,
dude, just
after habit,
disband. Just
I'll
disband
post-
now.
I'll vouch you.
Just
Don't
disband
worry.
now.
Just white out into goons and call it a day. You know, I think that's just the plan.
It's just the best thing to do, isn't
I'll
it?
send you a corp invite right
No,
now.
even
Billy,
better.
if there
White
was
out into the
anything-
bastion.
TJ, don't.
Oh, don't do that to yourself. That'd be mean.
If there was anything you could change, was there anything in the patches that you didn't like? I know you're on CSM, and I know you were like pushing for it. But was there anything you didn't like?
Yeah, there was some stuff that I wasn't super happy with the numbers, the way they came out in the end. But I'm happy with it overall. It's
You think the mutant needs more of a nerf? Where
Oof.
it's fine.
No.
Yeah.
Let me pop that on the screen real quick because these changes seemed a little bit interesting as far as the subcap changes.
I didn't look at that last picture until the very end. Did that say Lucian James?
Lucian
Yes, it
James.
did. I saw that.
It was the 12 Black Legion spies.
Yeah, I
was
know. I just saw Lucian James' name. I'm like, I don't think he was a Black Legion spy, and I saw it was pointing to like the tape.
Billy, was there anything you expected to be in the patch notes that wasn't?
No. Well,
He
I
can't
knew what the
say
patch
that.
notes. I knew what the patch notes were like a week ago. So
He couldn't
we
have
were-
said it anyway to break into EA.
I know. I just wanted yes or no answers. Curious.
was there
What's-
stuff in the patch notes I wanted, or like I'm sorry, what's I don't.
Was there something not in the patch notes, but you were expecting to be in the patch notes?
No.
What's the story with this? With active shielding and remote or rapid repair links affecting capital reps again? The hell, that was real random and slept in. Came out with the frigate escape bay shit.
Just go
Yeah.
read the Fozzie thread on that, rather than me try to explain.
Oh, there's a Fozzie thread on it.
On the officially forums, he talks about it somewhere.
So why would they nerf the Legion?
Legion's powerful in low sec.
Debatable. It wasn't like
It wasn't
it
like there
was
was no
strong.
counter. Like
No, but
Yes.
well,
it
yeah,
got
but
nerfed by
Did
virtue
nerf?
of people
No.
using it.
But you had fucking but you had fucking snuff like in a large Legion fleet, right? Then you had like 4 or 5 different smaller fleets trying to like engage said Legion fleet at different times a lot, and like they would just like tank everything and fucking murder them, right? But like we saw a little bit, like if you try to do that N+1 in nullsec, it doesn't always work out so good for the Legion generally.
No, in
You
low sec it
leave
works
me
well
and
'cause
my
of,
Legion
like,
fleet out of it. Don't you ever talk to my son again?
Well, what
Like,
works
they
in
just-
nullsec and what works in lowsec
Yeah.
are always going to be, incredibly
Complete
different
opposites,
things.
yeah, for sure.
I just don't know what they want to do with T3s. Is pretty much what it seems like.
It seems like they
CCP
just
is.
don't
So,
want a fleet
Like,
thing.
I'm not going to speak to the exact reasons that the Legion got hit because that's not for me to say or whatever. But like, the
Speculate.
reality is, well, come on, man.
Can't speculate if he fucking knows, dog. Like
They
It
just
does
don't
make
want
it
it to
hard.
be like a fleet doctrine, from what I can tell, because all of them suck as fleet ships right now.
So
Well, the-
like, Tech 3 cruisers just being better hacks is not the goal, right? Like, and especially with the Loki and to a lesser degree the Legion, in a way that's literally just kind of the role in a way they could occupy, and especially with the nerfs that we saw today, nothing operates in a vacuum. So if ship A and ship B get nerfed, then ship C obviously becomes significantly stronger, and sometimes you preemptively nerf something in anticipation of something that may or may not have never ever happened, right?
What is the end goal for T3 season?
I don't know what the end goal is, but
So why wouldn't they
These
just
target
buff ship
purpose.
C? If ship A and B need to be nerfed because ship C needs to be stronger, why don't they just make ship C stronger?
Yeah, like
Missed this
giving the
point.
Zealot.
That was
the
always
Zealot
my
power
fucking
grid.
question.
so I'll try to explain the theory of that one a little. So in Eve's ecosystem, if you buff something, you're pushing it, like, say there's like a static ocean of like standing balance, let's say, and certain things like rise over the wave, those are the waves, the things that are like really good, like the Munin or the Eagle or whatever. And if you push something up, you're not just pushing it up over the Munin Eagle, you're pushing it up over every fucking ship on that ocean, if that makes sense.
Are you talking about the Damos? Because it got a 7.5% per level.
I
increase?
can't wait to kill
The,
Deimos
the, D,
fleets.
the Demos was already like 50 feet, below sea
Below
level.
the fucking
Yeah,
ground.
the
Yeah,
Demos is basically a submarine, so we're not even gonna look at that.
Demos still isn't a fleet ship though.
Yeah, it
in
won't
Yeah.
be. But somebody will see the fucking buff and be like, "Ooh, let's fly rail Deimoses because that's a." I can't wait to kill those people. It's like Ishtar's.
I have a very old Deimos fit that I'm going to throw up on Python in a little bit. And see.
Unironically, Ishtar's like actually seem viable now.
It's probably
they're
the most
not.
retarded fit.
Yes.
Ask-
Yeah. No. Fly Ishtars and.
Ask the initiative how
No,
viable
let,
Ishtars
let,
are.
bring
Okay,
Ishtars back,
okay.
dude.
Not like 250 v 250. If you're fighting like full blobs, then yeah, it's just.
Was
gonna be
what
yeah.
like
better.
100 v 100?
But-
like,
but
I
Villy-
killed
less
I
than
killed
that.
an initiative fleet today, like to the man. Oh, it felt so good.
But Villy, I
Which-
do
It
It
wanna
only
ask,
counts
though.
if Shines is flying the it's FC.
Billy,
that-
what were they in?
Like armor
Shine-
ships
Shine-
just
Shines
aren't
with the FC, so-
good.
Hell yes.
Was it Stukas?
Yeah, it was Stukas with
Uh.
like Sweeples and bombers and Kikis and all that shit.
Yeah.
Like literally, I
Villy.
think I killed them like to the man. Not a single person escaped because they're like they came in like a dead end, so then they had to jump into us. We killed a bunch, and then they warped to the unidentified wormhole. And as we were landing at 0, we spread it so they couldn't bomb us, and then we just killed them. Like they never made it.
I
in.
remember when Dark Shines Raven fleet to kill a Roracle of ours in a dead end.
Oh my
We
god,
just
that
sat
was
with
fantastic.
Supers and Titans on the gate for an
There was
hour
that-
and a half, and he had no idea what to do.
If you could,
Pando
if you
took
could,
Ravens into Esoteria a while back, and we just I forgot. Oh, that was a good time. That was a good fight.
if
That was a
nothing,
long ass time ago.
I need to ask this because Villy, you mentioned bringing something up over the waves. Like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with bringing something out of obscurity into relative goodness if it helps to break up stagnancy in the game? Like, for
so
instance,
it's more stagnancy.
well, for a time,
Okay, so
maybe.
let's say, like for example, we gave the zealot like crazy big buffs. In 1 month, what is going to happen?
Well, everybody's gonna fly zealots, but why do we have to
Yeah.
give a
Really?
zealot a crazy buff? Why can't we say like, so let's say the Legion and Loki are super oppressive to, shit, I don't know, what are they super oppressive to?
The Loki's
Loki
pretty impressive
sucked
to
like a-
everything.
Well, unless you add nukes.
Well, on like a certain
Yeah.
scale though, like
Okay,
HO5,
okay, so at the scale that
yeah.
Lokis are good, they
Yeah.
are like oppressively good.
true.
Yes.
So what about legions? In what scale are legions good to where they are oppressive?
About
The
the
Legion
same
thing,
scale.
yeah, it's
About the same scale.
I say I'm thinking of I think
Here's my
there's
question,
a
like,
FE Legion fleet that's dead somewhere that I might argue with you. Since
I
this
even-
is still Trash
I
Talk
even
Tuesday.
think-
Oh, he
I
left.
even think
I
if
didn't
you
notice
put
that.
Legion versus Loki, I think the Legion comes out on top because of the E-War.
Yeah, we did PL Lokis versus Snuff Legions, and it was nobody really came out on top. We couldn't kill each other at all.
But I
Yeah.
guess-
We're just both just good at what they did, and we sat there and shot each other for like 20 minutes, and then just were like, well, this isn't going to work. So we just started shooting other people.
But I guess my question really becomes more along the lines of like, what's wrong with changing things more frequently? For instance, and I know Eve is unlike any other MMO that I've ever played, and probably unlike any other MMO that most of us have ever played.
I can take that question.
This
But-
is a League of
Because the
Legends
prob-
reference. I can feel it.
No, it's
No,
not
the
a League of
problem
Legends
with-
reference. It's just like, why is it a problem for things to get stronger for a period of time and then for other stuff to be affected, like to be
So,
increased in strength or decreased?
A lot of the problem is, right? So we're all older players, but when you have somebody new and coming into the game and they were told, hey guys, we're flying Munins, we've been flying Munins for 2 years now, it's very easy for a new player to say, okay, I'm going to train into a Munin. And that takes what, like
6
that, like
months?
Cruiser
A
5 is,
while,
yeah,
and
it takes
all
forever,
their
right? Like
hopes and
Cruiser
dreams
5
and-
itself is like a whole fucking, and all this other shit, right? So you have all these players that are coming in, they're like, oh, this new ship came out, I want to try it. So they train into it, and then suddenly, like the next month, it's okay. Now zealots are in, and it's like, okay, well they already have hack trained, but now they need the Amar Cruiser 5 trained. So now they have to spend a whole month training that. And
Plus
then
the
next
beam
month
skills.
yeah, and then the next month it's something different. So now you have all these people who are just like, okay, well now it's fly Feroxes, and they have absolutely no fucking battlecruiser skills trained or anything like that. And so that's a large issue with a lot of what
So
CCS
they
has to deal with.
buy injectors.
That was the one thing.
Okay, so-
Not everyone can make the
Injectors
money to
play a
buy
game.
injectors.
It
especially
That was what
without-
happened to
If
VVV.
if your
when they
answer is
were
ever
starting out.
buy injectors, your answer is wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what happened with
100%.
VVV when they started. Like they all came in as new bros, and they had to they were worried about the Munin change a lot. I remember, and
That's
then
why they
Kyle
just
would
flew
ask me
Balmain.
about it because they were worried they were all training the Munins and they were going to get nerfed to hell. So that's
And that's why Dami's.
And,
mean,
and so
Dami-
that's
Dami's
another
a pretty impressive.
that's another good point too, is that should we, and this is one thing that I've kind of thought about recently, is like, should having these skills up to this certain level really matter that much?
I mean, you were in goons a lot of the times. The fours, we're fine as long as you still were sitting in the like the
Well, I mean,
what's
if
the,
I'm being
what's the
honest,
skill for
ones
invols
were,
that 1 to
ones were
4.
fine.
Like for an alliance like PL, like yeah, like having your skills, like having good skills matters a lot because we don't put a lot of people in fleet, but I mean we all have good skills, so we can still do
That's
a
the
lot
issue.
with our
But
fleet.
shouldn't it? Should
That's
Well,
it
no,
the
yes.
though?
Are you
Like,
asking more of a
shouldn't?
general question? Yeah.
Well, I'm
Should they
saying,
decrease them all for everybody? type deal?
shouldn't we be? So if we're talking about how we want to make people more effective, we want to make ships more effective. Wouldn't it be more logical to look at what the skill systems actually do for these specific ships and change the ships based on that? So, like, for
So
instance, let's say I don't know what the subsystems are for a legion, but let's say that they, well, I mean, I know it there, but whatever. Let's say that instead of having one bonus, they give a bonus that would make it more oppressive. Not in the sense that like I want it to be oppressive, but it would make it stronger and make it more important to have that level 4 to 5 skill, but not important enough to where with a larger quantity of them you would necessarily need it. So it gives you that room where if you have a lot of something, it's still going to be really oppressive, but if you have less of something, those pilots need to be more highly skilled, I guess.
That's always been my worry. Like the higher skill pilots can just get dicked over by N+1,
Right.
which I guess is just always going to be hard to avoid with the nature of Eve because
There's no way to have that
yeah,
not.
yeah, exactly.
Except back when like Brooks and Kings were making videos flying super expensive doctrines, full implant sets, and dropping carriers in a time where not everyone had triage. But
But
N
once again,
plus one
as
is
soon as you make
yeah.
something, N+1 resistant, it's usually not long after the blob itself catches up, and then that system very quickly becomes
right,
the
Yeah.
problem itself, which is to a
And
degree
with
what we've seen with Titans and
Yeah.
Supers, right? Like, it's like, okay, if these things are the way to force multiply, and I have 100 dudes and you have 200 dudes, well then my next goal is for my 200 dudes to ensure that they also have exactly what you had for force multipliers, and then the game
Yeah.
just spirals out of control.
And you just can't avoid it,
everything
which
is N
sucks.
plus one now. Every
Yeah.
doctrine is N plus one because everybody can fly. Like Eve now is just about taking risk and who is willing to take more risk to win a fight than the other guys.
Well, and
who's gonna fuck up and who's not gonna fuck up, like
Yeah.
from a fleet commander perspective.
yeah,
and I
I will
did promise
say.
Bill that I would talk about this. Go ahead, Rain. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, one way for CCP to kind of give the new bros a way to catch up to with some of these skills is like magic. Like anyone who undocks has to train 14 skills. 14 is very specific skills to 5, and it takes a month or two maybe to train all of those. But that's being pushed to new bros and any sort of new bro group, Red versus Blue, Eve Uni, Horde, Karma Fleet, whatever, Brave Newbies. I think CCP removing those and rewarding them via the tutorial would be a good method to kind of getting rid of them without completely fucking them over. And then also just remove attributes.
I think you should just
That's
get
complete.
them. I think the
And
Magic
also
14 should
Yeah,
like
you
just be
either just
given
get
to
them.
you.
I would be okay with giving them if it's done via tutorial. So like if you
Yeah.
like, oh, I need a market all or something, or you're one of those people who's like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna inject into my Titan. Like, yeah, you have to put in a little more effort. But it's like to complete new bro, if they complete the tutorial, they should be on the same starting page to training into a Thrasher as me versus being 2 months behind because they have to train very specific like CPU skills or whatever the fuck.
If you
As
think
much
about
as
it,
I
these are
wish the
just
game wasn't like it, N+1 is just the game's gonna end up being. Period. No matter how like better my pilot is versus your pilot, like no matter if I fly a more expensive doctrine or not, if my doctrine starts shitting on you because it costs more money, the other group's just gonna get that same ship later on.
It's not
Which just
necessarily
sucks.
always the case, but yeah, I mean, generally
Well,
plus one.
then it
The game's
becomes
already
an
N plus
issue
one.
too, right?
Right.
Then it becomes what? Sorry.
Then it becomes a major issue too, though. If like something is like high skill locked or whatever, then usually it becomes a situation where there's no way for the smaller group or the larger group to compete, right? Which is where it's
Yeah.
like we've all seen, or
Well, there is
most
always a
people
way for the
I think
larger group to
remember
compete.
PL's harassment of like the original Brave Newbies and just like the destruction of thousands of players, from the ecosystem, just the oppressive nature of what they did there.
that was a
Yeah.
lot of photos and waffles for that.
It's just I
I
don't know.
was
I feel
brave
like
for that.
I don't know. I worry that like there's players who play the game. I don't. because I can't say better because technically that's not viable in E. There's players who put in a lot of work and like have a lot of skill and a lot of knowledge of the game, who could just get dicked over because they have 15 more ships than you or whatever. And I guess there's no way to avoid that. I guess it's just
No,
I
but I
would
mean-
disagree. Like, there's a certain scale where that's 100% true, but I definitely don't think 15 is the.
okay. Well,
the
I was just throwing out a number, but like, yeah, I get what you mean. Like, if my guy has better reflexes than like your guy, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say? I just don't know how to phrase it.
Like the N
Yeah, I know
plus
what you're trying
one
to say.
really comes down to like the big blob fights, which honestly, like, they don't happen that often anymore.
Plus, even in some of the blob fights, there was times where, like when in tribute, where a lot of the PL and CFCs would take fights into, more more hostiles and still come out decently on top. Sure, you wouldn't win objectives because that's not
Well,
how you win objectives.
I mean, I'll give you an easy example. Like, look at Providence right now. There's been tons of opportunity for skill oppression in numerically inferior situations, and I know the group. You've been working with Seto right now has done, you know, has had plenty of opportunity to
Mhm.
utilize skill and hard work to overcome
Yeah.
obstacles in numbers, and that's part of the reward of the game, right? Like,
Yeah.
if things are easy, if it's easy to just put 5 guys against 20, and for those 5 guys to, like, no scope headshot, all those 20 dudes, then it's not. There's no reward for doing it. Part of the
Yes.
reward and part of the reason people play Eve, because to do those things, to do that, or to engage that skill expression, to show your skill and your organizational talent and whatever else, it actually means something. You worked hard for that, and you get the reward once you do that work. So
Yeah.
there's a certain component of that that really can't be understated.
And when it happens, God, is it satisfying. I just worry with the changes and that could be going away, I guess. If that makes
What
sense.
within those changes do you think reduces skill expression?
Well, I just think one of the things, as much as I like the EHP nerf, or the resist nerf, I just wish it. I don't think it should have been applied to subcaps.
Well, I think the N plus one, it
Because then
helps the smaller groups. I think this, because you
Now-
can fly battleships, and those big groups are still going to fly hacks. Your
thing that
battleships are going to be
worries me
tanking more, and still.
is just that like it becomes a DPS race. Who has more DP? At least that's what it seems like right now. It'll play out
Yeah,
differently.
but we're also flying like munions a lot, right? I mean, like when you have our arties, like that really exaggerates it to a certain degree.
I worry about it becoming like just pure DPS race, pretty much for every fight. I may be wrong in that. And it may
Well,
play
why
out
do you worry
differently.
about
But
that?
how is it not?
How's it not like that
already?
already, though? Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good question.
Well, it depends on for like the blob size. It's always going to be a DPS race, but like in the
Well, it's
fight,
a DPS race for everybody.
One on one's a DPS race. If I do more DPS than you do, I win.
Like if I have thermodynamics 5, I'm probably gonna win that fight.
No, one-on-one's a lot different. I don't know if you guys have ever actually done one-on-one.
Yeah, I've done one-on-one before.
It's totally not.
I mean,
it's
in frigs
it's
and shit.
do
like
more
plus.
DPS than that person reps.
It's whoever
and
makes
rep
the
more
less
person.
mistakes wins. It's
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
DPS is
that
part of
person
it,
will- that
but it's
person
very
that makes
easy to
less
mitigate that
mistake will have
DPS.
better DPS than you do.
No, it's
I
very
mean,
easy
it's
to
always
avoid
about
that
them
DPS.
doing more damage than your opponent. That's boils on just that. I do more damage than you do to me. I win.
Well, I
And that's
apply
just-
more. I apply more damage to
I
you.
think
so
what
it's-
Seto is trying to say, he's afraid it's going to take the skill out of FCing, and it's just going to be whoever has more damage on field wins. And it
it's
doesn't
not
matter how.
not necessarily. It's like
Yeah.
the skill part is still applying it.
say
to-
I bring
to
in
do it.
like 40 like 30 zealots versus like 40 HFIs or something like that. Then it's like, okay, do my guys spread their EVOR properly? Do I keep good transversal with my fleet? That's like what it is now. Do I make all the right calls and who to shoot in what order, stuff like that. Now with how low like EHP is, although if my Python was right earlier today, the Zealot didn't get nerfed that much because of T2 base resistance. Now I think it's just like I'm worried that it's just gonna be like, oh, he has 40 more HFIs. My guys, even if they 8 AC on time and broadcast reps, they're still gonna get volley because they don't have the EHP they did. And I may be able to kill them faster too. I think, but then it just becomes, okay, who's killing faster versus like, do you get your ADC off? Do you spread your EVOR properly? Do you do all this other stuff?
or do we come up with new tactics?
Yeah.
Or I
and
mean,
I'm
I think people like there is going to
And I
be a
may
lot
be
more
phrasing
people
this
dying
like
in fleets
I
for
may be
sure.
phrasing
100.
this all wrong, and it may be coming out the way I don't want it to come out. But like, I hope you can see what I'm sort of worried about. I don't know. I'm excited to see how it plays out.
I
It
mean,
was
a lot more
to,
people are going to be dying on fleet, and I think that's also what CCP wants is more people to be dying.
but
So
While
all,
ships are more expensive.
all
I
ships are more
guess we'll see
expensive,
how it
and these
plays
ore
out.
changes like take more effect than just.
I'm excited to see how it plays out because it's a shake up. It's just, it's where new things, new exciting things are always worrying. Like jumping
Yeah.
out of a fucking air, it's always scary, but like it's exciting as hell. You know.
I mean, to answer your question to a certain degree, like you're now like you're saying things are changing. So in the new reality, you're going to be taking fights that you have a good chance of winning, probably like you do now. That fight might look different than it doesn't really change that much in terms of like,
Yeah.
okay, that fight looks good. I'm gonna engage, or I'm not gonna engage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not changing as much as I think you think. If that makes any sense, I don't know.
I don't know. I guess what I'm thinking is what you mean is it degrades down to where two fleets meet in the middle. Don't move, just sit there and slug it out. Whoever's got the best DPS wins. Is that what you're
But I
worried
don't
about? It
think it's been
becoming?
like that. I don't think it's been like that for a long
No,
time,
I'm saying
dude. Like
degrading to that though. If that's a
Do
bad
you guys
thing, is that what
remember
he's worried
like
about?
the high sec perimeter keep star battle? And that was just
Unfortunately.
literally
I
warp to
gotta
each
bounce,
other at
guys, but thanks for
zero.
having me. I'll be
well,
back later.
that was a very
See you
specific.
later. But
That,
yeah,
Well,
it's
that's what it
that was
sounds
a
like.
very
CCP
specific
wants.
example, though, because
But there was so many problems with those battles. Like the thing is, like, there's no way to deal with ECM drones because you can't use smart bombs. So like, literally, there would be like 5,000 fucking ECM drones sitting on like each side, and it's like there's no counter to them at all. Like you can't use capitals, you can't use bombers, you can't like, and like it, when they're that scale, like there's just those fights were so fucking terrible.
also
Yeah, I
boosting
agree.
boosting was a thing back then as well, so that changed
Not
a
in
lot
can I
of.
hindsight.
boosh in
Yeah,
high
so,
sec?
right. Oh, really?
No,
Oh, can't boost
can't
an
boosh in high sec.
Was that not our entire strategy? Okay, my bad.
No,
No,
it
definitely
was
wasn't.
the
it
entire
was sit on a
I don't think
strategy
it
bridge
was.
and
was
propless
It
fucking
was. That's
barrel
why you lost.
and shoot at
Well,
each
Well, they
other.
were propless. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
so
was
so like
such a
there was
bad
no
time.
there was just no real, there was no skill to it, no like there was no way to really innovate. Like we tried like maelstroms and we tried like dummies and like it's just like it,
It
There's no
came down.
point.
It
Best
honestly
thing, the
came
best
down.
ship in the game at that time was the Ferox. Like,
It,
I was
it also
opposed
came
nerf
down
Ferox
to
too.
fucking
I thought that
live
was.
intel
I
link.
thought the nerf happened during it, Billy.
Maybe that's correct.
Yeah, I think it was
I know the
during all of that it happened.
I know of the 1,000 fucking Feroxes I have in the Tranquility cache. They're all fit for the current nerf.
I don't think
Those were
anybody
so
won that
unfun.
for sure. It's just
Why?
cancer.
You just sit on comms and listen to, hey, by the way, so and so, you're about to be primary, and then you overheat and you either tank or you don't, and you just move on. Oh god, that sucks so fucking.
Well, the problem is like there was no way to deal, like there was no logi either, right? Like that's part of the, because you couldn't clear ECM drones, so all the logi just had like 20 ECM drones each on them, and like you can only
Yeah, and then you
sensor boost them.
you also have like groups like Goons and PL would only be war deck to one group in the blob and just owning that entire group.
Oh,
Nobody
dude,
able to do
I
anything.
remember one of those times we were coming up there to have one of those perimeter fights. When this was when I was in Goons, and then we realized that we weren't war decked with anybody, and it was just like, okay, well, guess we're just gonna stand this down. I hated those so much. It was just literally the worst type
That
of
was in the
content.
middle of the not was it Orjanen? Yeah, the Orjanen
Yeah,
deployment
it
too.
was a Janning campaign.
So like it's almost like we stopped having those really dope Geminet fights, and then in favor got high sec fights instead. That shit sucked so fucking bad.
Oh, and there was whole Janet. Anything outside of null second L Janet was just cancer. The low sec timers.
Oh,
high
I had
sec
fun at low
timers.
sec timers. We had one time we were B-52ing one of their staging forts, then it turned into a full on super drop. A lot of fun.
Oh, I should have killed Tappy Supers that day, but fucking Nidus was white knuckling so hard.
Oof. So one
What was
thing I
this?
do. Go ahead, Billy. Sorry.
What was this opportunity you had to kill our supers?
But you get so basically, Pro God was like all your supers were on the Fortizar untethered. They were boating their fighters out. So what I said, I was like, it was bridging 50 Hictors on top of them, and then Sino and our Titans 100 off, and Doomsday all the supers and kill them.
What system was this? What fight?
Oh,
This is an
Janin.
Shannon.
Yeah. Is your armor supers and
Oh, the fucking armor shit. Oh Jesus.
yeah, and I was and Nidus
Don't-
was like, no, we have to come in together. I'm like, no, like there's nothing there killing you. Calm down. It was just white knuckling super
That
hard.
sounds
so.
about right.
Yeah,
We
it
I was
definitely
like,
did
and
not
I
get
would have
punished
gladly
anywhere
traded.
near as much as we should have with that super group. So
Yeah, you guys like very lucky. You only lost one Titan.
So
What's stuff drop?
Jaden.
so
That
one
was the dude who
thing.
bumped out of a pass. Just
Oh,
happened
yeah.
to be paying attention.
So
oh
one
yeah,
thing
the
that
snuff trickery. That's right. Yeah.
No, it was a.
No, it's
He
big
was
it
talking
was,
about something else.
there was one that is Inojan, and the dude warped to the pass, and I just happened to follow him there. And then I'm sitting there, and like 3 minutes after he warped in, he bumped off the stick.
I remember that.
It was just felt bad for him.
so
Cancerous fucking large gun
One-
or large pos gun tower. Oh, I hate it. Fuck.
one big thing that I want to talk about, because I promised Big Bill the Boss, even though I don't even like that guy, but I promised him that we would talk about it. So all these changes that are coming in, do you guys think any of these changes are actually going to be promoting content or just stifling it more? Because it's now more expensive to field these ships. They are less effective in combat, and it's less worth it to actually use them and to fight with them. Like, what do you think about that?
I think it all depends on it depends on that. Like, how many risk are you willing to take? If you're willing to take a risk, like you can still use your super carrier. You're
So
like, you can still use a lot of ships if you're willing to take risk.
at
think
this
that's
point,
what it
there's
comes down
still
to.
no core incentive to engage in content besides content itself. Is kind of the key problem we're dealing with. Like, there's no incentive for me to invade the drones. There's no incentive for drones to invade me. Like, all of the content, the incentive-based content right now is based around like Vale and places where people are actually trying to do things because they're not as. All of the established groups have no significant reason to attempt anything, and that is a major problem with the current environment. There's no, once I'm established in Esoteria, what's my incentive to want any other space? Aside from like this space is 10% better than that space, but because of the infrastructure, that I've already invested in the space, that 10% isn't worth even remotely close to the effort.
Uprooting
cost
and
to-
then moving everything. Yeah, fuck that.
Yeah, that
Well,
was kind
and
of like
why does
my
that
thing.
have to be the only reason to
It doesn't,
fight?
but like, it doesn't, but that's part of the problem. There isn't, how do I put this?
It's not like you can go into someone's region and dead zone their staging anymore. It's not like you can fucking go kill our 64 passes anymore. It's just there's no, unless you're the only two like kind of real objectives you have, and at least in Sovnol, is to take Sov, like Billy said. But if you already have Sov, that fucking sucks a lot. Or it's to try to glass citadels out, which that's utterly pointless as well.
Yeah, because they're so
Uh,
easy to replace. So like,
Well, they're easy to replace, and it's not fucking fun.
Well, Citadels are like the most cancerous, like significantly more cancer than the Solve system. Like, it's like, oh, let me just, go.
Do they plan on nerfing Keepstar EHP, or have they like realized that Keepstar EHP and a Titan staying the same, and then Titans getting nerfed is kind of like not good for killing Keepstars?
well, and that's kind of my question too. Is like the changes that they're making they're working for when a fight is happening. They're changing how the fights happen, but do we really think these are the changes that need to be made to actually encourage more fighting to happen in the game? Because that's what we all want, right? We want, it's a PvP game, we want to fight each other, even if it's for, seemingly no reason. Like, obviously nobody wants to invade Esoteria, nobody really wants to invade drones and live there, but we still want to fight each other, and we want to have places to fight and things to fight over, but it seems like there's just this huge focus on, and this is what I would love to ask some of the CCP devs, just like personally face to face. It seems that there's so much focus on like whaling and killing ratters and miners and making these escalation changes based on this one type of content that a remarkably small number of people get involved in as far as like planning it and everything like that. I think these incursion drops and the super kills and titan kills recently have been planned and executed by 3 to 4 people at most. And it's the same people every time.
I mean, a certain portion of that is like, Olmeca is, has a, how do I put this? An oversized presence, maybe. I don't know, like in terms of kind of representing that community, which is very small. But it's one of those things where at the moment there's just, that is the content a lot of people see day in and day out. It's actually one of the most like toxic content that I can think of, where it's like, hey, 200 kikis in your space, everybody has to form now. Like, it's like, Jesus Christ, it's so like, how do I put this? It's so fucking terrible for like the defender. It's
Well, I
like,
think like part of the problem with that is like if you continue feeding to that group, like they're going to come and try to kill you, like because you're giving them the content they want. Like, oh, like we don't get them coming to drones that
Yeah.
often.
They
let me
stay
tell
out
you
in
about
obvious.
!Villy. Like,
Oh yeah.
which is a
Just
it's a
don't
meme on
feed.
disc test. Yeah, it says just don't feed, because that's exactly what happens. If you feed people, they come back, and if you feed them again, then they never go away, right?
Yeah.
It's part of the problem in terms of the
Give
way
a mouse a cookie.
psychologically people act in Eve, which is that if you feed, you further escalate your own problem, right? So Eve creates this situation where there's no way to feed and it'd be good. Like, even if your guys had fun, even if it was a great op, if you fed, you fucked up bad, because all it's going to do is create further pressure on you by that group to do it again and again and again and again. And if you feed once, that could later on cause a group to come back 5, 10, 15 times,
Oh yeah.
chasing that high that they had when they got that nice feed from you the first time, right?
Definitely.
And that's the
only-
kind of pressure that'll like literally kill in a lot.
The
But
only
typi-
reason I ever started flying Wolverines is because it's the only thing to do right now. It's not like you can go fucking casually invade somebody. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of time and effort, and you fucking burn your content creators out doing it. It's just unfortunately it's like you tied into content creation. That's literally the only thing to do right.
I don't know if that's actually true though. Like, to me that's kind of the lie that people say, but not actually true. If you want to generate content, like every night, like literally I'm doing, as I put one guy in a fucking Entosa Smallest and I form up some dudes and we go over to Horde Space and we'll find some content. And there's nothing that's stopping anybody from doing the same in a different area, right? Like, if you want content, you can go get content. It's usually not that hard.
But what
It's
kind
just
of
people don't want
content
to
are
put
you
in the
getting
work.
from that? Like, what came to fight your ruptures?
Feroxes.
Pharaxes. So
I think
you're
like a
not-
group like Horde, like that's easy to do that to a
Okay,
group like Horde.
What
It's not
group?
always
Okay,
easy.
so like, what group where do you feel can't get content?
Like if PL went into Esoteria and started intosing in space, we
Okay,
wouldn't
so
be able to get.
whoa, you said in Esoteria. Why don't you go to Curse and start intosing Catch or Wiki Creek or?
I mean, it'd be the same in some of those places. Like we would come and we would get like massively blobbed because of our name, and people would be like, oh, which I completely understand. I just don't. I think there's certain groups that will respond certain ways if.
Well, I mean, you're sort of right. Like, you're gonna get blobbed a little bit, right? But over
Yeah.
time, you can build kind of a, how do I put this? Like, first off, any capable alliance in Eve should have some ability to understand what to do when you're being blobbed, how to fight, how to move, how to.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying I don't. Yeah, I'm not saying I don't know how to. It's just
If your
more
complaint is
knowing
that, like,
to
I
deal
formed
with it.
100 dudes and then they formed 150 to fight me, it's like, okay,
It's-
like,
I get what you're
Well, I
I
don't think
formed
that's the
like 60
complaint.
ruptures today.
It's usually
well,
not.
it is to a degree though, right? Like that's the problem. So people get in their head that like there's no content because I got blobbed. It's like no, there's no content because you're getting blobbed, and then you're unwilling to like play the game a little with those people who are blobbing you and find a way to work around it.
Yeah, I've done the same thing in Tosis wise with like small gang. Like so trying to get alliances in their kind of like their worst time zone, starting toasting that shit. So you're not going to get a huge blob. You're still going to get more than you can handle. But if you're in like a small gang comp, you can usually kite away and have some fun. And if not, you just warp away. You usually don't. So I mean, that's something you can do. I
How
mean,
many
if you really want to.
times?
So you're talking
So
about
the-
creating content. How are you guys' alliances? Is the average line member? Can he just go grab his buddies, jump into Toast's ship, and go start in Toast's and shit on his own? And there's no
Yeah.
repercussions within your alliance,
I was gonna
right?
stop
No
him on
repercussions at all.
PL.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
Well, I know
assuming you're not
PL, but-
doing it to blues,
Well,
obviously.
no,
Okay, obviously don't do it to like.
But I don't
but
think
just
it's gonna.
rather than randomly do it. I mean, is
I
that
think like
you guys have a
five,
problem with that?
5 or
All
10
right.
ships are not going to cause a diplomatic incidents. I don't think.
Well, if they're toasting things, they might. That's why I'm.
We,
That's why I'm
it
would they get
depends
in
on
trouble
your
if they were doing
alliance.
that?
Like if,
Yeah, that's what I'm
if
asking. In your
someone in
guys' alliance,
test, someone in test went to whatever that region goon zone by you guys
Period
is,
basis.
Here's basis and started in toasting, I'm sure that would cause issues.
That's against the NIP.
Yeah,
that's what I'm
but
asking.
if
So your player,
came-
your line members don't have that ability to do that.
they can
Just on
come.
their
Yeah,
own.
They
they
just
can
can't do
come
it in
to-
that area.
Yeah, they can't do it in certain
Okay,
areas.
But
But
does
they can come
everyone your
anywhere else.
members know exactly who you've got all the deals with?
No,
So
and
we
so
don't-
usually they do
so
other things.
We don't
No, that's what I'm saying.
necessarily have
Yeah.
nips with people we're not blue to, though. Like all the people we have, to my knowledge, I'm not a diplo by any means, but like for the vast majority of people we're not allowed to fight, where you can, it's physically projected and stand. I can't go.
Blue to is like do that one drone renter group, but I mean, it's obvious they're in fucking drones, but like, and it's obvious for every member in test, every member in goons that they shouldn't entosis each other's space.
No, not shouldn't. Absolutely cannot. Will be kicked for it.
So you'd be told not to.
Line members cannot just go out and toast shit for the hell of it.
I don't think Billy would kick somebody if they didn't. I think he'd tell them.
You don't think goons would?
Oh, goons 100%
Goons
would.
100% would.
I don't
Goons
think
is a lot different though.
That's what I was asking. That's what I was asking about your guys' alliance. If that were to happen in your alliance, would that be a big deal?
I think you're heavily overestimating the amount of people who's willing to jump up and go engage in tosis. Oh my god, is that so unfun?
We're just talking about content and stuff. Would that be a problem though if people just decided to do that in your guys' group?
No, I mean we have people that make bad.
It absolutely would be a problem in my group. Is my point.
I mean that's you're in it. In a big nullsec like blob. So yeah, like of course it would be a problem. Like it'd probably be a problem in a group like
Test
Horde.
is not a small group. That's how
like
they're a
Test
pretty big group too.
And goons for sure. Horde probably has some agreements with people saying I know that for sure. So who knows? But like groups like PL, NC, like maybe even in it to an extent, could probably get away with it. Probably Fire Co. I'm not sure if what net they have with anybody.
Well, no, I'm not even talking about that. Honestly, you could go to some place where absolute enemies with have no deals with them at all. We're in toasting them in a different part of the region, and you did it, you'd probably still get in trouble.
Not for
so
us.
you have your groups that
maybe that's the problem with the group.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You have groups that stifle content too, while trying to create it. So you have creating content is not just one or two people doing it. It can be everybody, unless you're in a group that doesn't allow it.
Well, politics is a thing, I guess, but like
Absolutely.
at the same time, those same like 5 or 10 or 20 guys can go down into fucking Veil the Silent and fuck around with.
I mean, that's what happens when you get people who blew the entire game. Like,
I agree. Yeah, I'm just curious.
The problem with the group you're in, the group, like, there's nothing that's going to change that. If you don't like that as a part of the group, you can leave and join another group that doesn't have the.
Well, I mean, you say like blue the whole game, but like every group basically has roughly the same amount of blues in terms of 3 main big coalitions. Like,
yeah, but I would say there's more restrictions on a group like Test and Goons than there is on a group like NC and PL.
I would agree. There's not more restrictions.
Like what we can and can't do, like opposed to what you guys can and can't do. We can go dread bomb anybody in the game, like, but obviously you can't.
But but
keep
the,
it
the question
sweet.
is there's a certain the mechanic in the game that is certainly to drive both the meta and the in-game thing.
But
It's-
Intosing
it's-
also sucks.
It does.
so-
It absolutely
yeah.
is. But yeah, it's just
For
one of
the-
those things. I was just curious if your guys would go just to pick a random alliance and did it there, that be a problem. If
Wouldn't be a problem.
well, I
here.
know PL doesn't do anything. I'm not asking about PL.
Yeah.
PL doesn't do anything.
So I mean, the only person you really ask in here then is
Billy.
Billy.
Yeah,
Well, you don't have to necessarily Tosis, by the way. You can shoot a jump bridge, like same. Like
I
you're still
get
gonna get
that.
a
I'm just
response.
talking about
Attacking infrastructure in
and
general.
Tosising has other ramifications,
No,
right?
so does attacking a jump
would you
bridge.
would you let
Oh,
your
attacking
yes.
line members
infrastructure
do
in
it?
general is the same?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, for a nip, yeah, I guess, yeah.
Oh, that it riles people up. No one likes to get your shit in toast.
Which people would come and shoot our stuff.
Same,
Yeah,
dude.
no kidding, dude.
You know what I miss though, and this was something. This was the like when I was super active, and I know the meme is that I never log in now, and I really don't. But when I was super active, I would do a fleet every day. I would go fight somebody every day, and it was so easy just to go to somebody's space and say, "Hey, let's fight," and then we fight. But then blackout happened, and that kind of gameplay went away, and now they're making it so that you almost have to just do this one type of gameplay to get any type of fights. And I understand, like you're
What
saying,
type of
that
gameplay?
well, whaling mostly.
Mm,
But I understand what
If
you're
you
saying.
show
Like you can.
like, I mean, I guess it depends on. I wouldn't say that. Like, if you put a 50-man fleet in test space to get a fight, I guarantee you they're gonna come fight you.
Yeah, but in what though?
Anything. They'll like
Losing
Okay,
is still
but that
losing is still
answers the problem.
content. Yeah,
That answers the problem. Like when you say, well, what are they gonna come fight you? It's like, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like you don't get to choose what we come and fight you
Yeah.
with.
Well, then I don't
Like-
want to choose, but I want there to be some semblance.
So you
of,
want to
like,
feed, right? Like that's
No,
And
I
you
don't
want
want to
to win-
feed.
There's
I
no
don't want
fair
anybody
fights
to
in
feed.
it. Only like people don't like if you're forming. In my opinion, if you're forming as an FC. You're like, oh, there's a 50-man. Like Billy came up to fucking R10 right now. He's in a
Just 50 Billy,
75-man
huh?
gang. I wouldn't form to give him a good fight. I'd form to kill him and win. Like that's the point.
to drive him
like-
away or kill him. Exactly.
Well,
Yeah,
why
like,
wouldn't you
the
form
point
to
is
give
to
him a good
win.
fight and also
The
I
only
win?
want because a good fight is the one you
It's a
win.
win. Exactly. Yeah.
Like, I don't
only
feel
place
good
there is
after I
that-
lose. Like, I
Red
just
versus
fight
blue is the only
recently.
place you had the
Flashback
exact
to
even
what
number.
Billy said. He said that if you feed one time, you lose the fight one time in your own space, they will come back. And the one time you
Yeah.
don't actually really want to have to fucking deal with them or fight fair.
Like, I
is-
won't drop supers on him, but like I will form a subcap doctrine that beats his.
and try to have more numbers. I mean,
Yeah,
why would
like-
you ever go into a fight with
You
the
have
thought,
to
well, I might lose this on
somewhere
purpose?
else.
Red versus blue is the only group that I know would do that though. You show up with 15 people, they form 15 people. You show up with 20. It was
Yeah,
that
but
was
that's
the only
like a
place I've ever seen
different.
that.
That's a different place.
It was
though,
it was
like,
a
they
different thing.
don't-
That's but I say in the game. That's the only place I've ever seen that. Everywhere else is
You can't really
you come with
do
10,
that in
I'm going to
normal
give you
setting.
20. You come with 20, I'm going to hit you with 80. You know, that's because I want you out
Well,
of my space.
you can though, like that, and that's what I did for a long time. And Dom, you can attest to that. That's exactly what I did for a long time.
But that's what you should do.
Like,
Like-
it
And I expect-
works
and I
for
expect
certain
not to do
people,
that
but
to
like
you
if you
if I go to
come
their space,
like
But-
what Billy did today, he expected to be blobbed, I'm sure, in Tosising a system. Like
Yeah, but I would have brought out if I was in Horde and I was coming to defend that, I would have brought out like Caracals or something like that. I wouldn't have done
Yeah, but that-
Phalanxes.
is like you bring Caracals and lose, and now the system's reinforced. Now Billy's thinking, or his allies are thinking, like, oh, maybe we can kill this iHub if we form. Like this is only what they formed today, and then it's like it's the slippery slope. It's the exact thing that happened in Ojanen.
Yeah,
That is
and then they
ex-
get
I mean-
their
And then
and
your
then they
line
come
number
in and then they get their ass kicked and they
losing.
realize, oh, this was just someone coming out for a good fight.
Then they don't come back because they got their ass kicked. So they're like, oh, well, I don't know if I want to come back here now. I mean, like, it doesn't, like, it's a slippery slope when you start, like, letting stuff like that happen. Like, we saw it happen very much.
well,
in
I mean, the
Ojanen
thing
and-
is, like, I took ruptures, right? So, like,
yeah.
you can also gauge people's like level of actual intent to be aggressive by what they bring. Like if
Oh
I
yeah,
bring
I'm not saying your
if I
plan is
bring
if
fucking
you.
tech to a full
Yeah.
Eagle fleet, like it's like yeah, you should probably react to that a little differently than me bringing fucking rupture.
Yeah,
right?
I'm not saying like it was your thinking if you RF to like, oh, let's actually do something for this timer, but like it as
No, I
the
wasn't.
other
I wasn't even
side.
reinforcing
Yeah.
it to.
And that's the
Yeah,
thing,
but like
though,
looking at it from
is that it
like my
used to
side of
be.
it as an FC, when
It,
I see an enemy coming into our space and then toasting a system, I'm thinking like we need to kill that dude, not give him a good fight.
and that's
So
something
like
that I never experienced until after Blackout. So Blackout happened, and you never knew how many people were really in your space and what their
I mean,
real
you were there
intentions
for
were.
the campaign. That's exactly how
No,
all
I
that started.
wasn't. I wasn't there for
All
the
of
Janet campaign.
you were in goons.
Yeah,
I'm saying
goons
like
weren't
He
the
wasn't
there.
playing the game yet at that point.
Yeah,
I don't think
I mean, the goon, like the whole thing snowballed. Goons getting up, Citadel's there, and then like, oh, more and more goons coming. And
but
tests coming. It
I was
just
in
snowballed.
AUTZ, so like none of
But it's
that
still, it's the
impacted me.
reason you were there is because it snowballed.
The Dread Bomb happened in AUTZ.
Yeah.
Like,
Most of the good content, all the good content happened in ATZ. All
I
the
don't
tie-dye
know.
fights happened
A
in
couple of those,
ATZ.
there's a couple of really nice battleship fights that happened in.
Oh, the
early
dropping the supers on the PL staging against the Megatrons was pretty good.
But either
Talking
way,
about the Tito War I just got back.
my point is that it seems like
10-minute
the
war.
mentality changed to where now instead of like, and you might have always had the mentality of where you just want to get somebody out of your space as soon as you can, but I've never had that mentality, and I likely never will, because that's not the
That's the difference.
mentality
Like
that I
that's
want
the
to
difference
have.
between a goon coming from goons and being an FC and coming to like groups where aren't as big as goons to say like there's a big difference when like coming from goons to here and learning how to FC there compared to here. Like you can think that there because like, oh, it's just a good fight because you always know you are going to have a blob. You are always the blob. When you're here, we're not always the blob, so it doesn't always work.
Well, that's not
We don't always
exactly
get the
true
benefit.
either.
Yeah, because if you can't reform right away, somebody else can.
It seems like they've been having less and less of a good time doing that recently, at least. But
Goons, yeah.
yeah, but you're right
Goons
though. I mean,
numbers are trash.
traditionally, it's been quite the blow up.
Well, what happens is your members just start leaving.
Yeah.
Imagine that. If you treat
Well,
people like shit, they don't
trigger
stay.
or your FCs start living.
Then
FCs have been leaving from everywhere except for our coalition.
Tappy's roadmap, Billy. Watch out.
What is sorry?
I will say
That's
I think
a roadmap right there.
don't
Trigger
I think
happy
if
2.0.
goons or tests don't do something like in the next year that like the game is just going to like the game's at stagnation right now. Like one of the big groups doesn't take a risk, includes our group too. But I mean we also just got off a war, really. Well,
I was
war,
say, I
but-
don't know about you, but I had to alarm clock for a lot of stupid
Yeah.
China time.
Like,
and
I think
times
if
and-
like the like there's only 3 groups in the game right now, like and 2 of them are blued to each other. Well, not blue, but friend.
There's a lot of small content. You just got to be willing to.
Well, like I'm
sacrifice
not
things.
saying there's not small content. Like don't get me wrong on that, but there's nothing that we can deploy PL2 that won't completely fuck up that content.
Yeah, okay, but like traditionally, like why right now do we have a lot of blues? Is it because we really like each other a lot and we want to be big and massive and get along and have like 17 FCs in general? Or do you
Agreed.
think it's because we're trying to compensate for a tradition of coalition that has just existed and
I
been
think
a blob for
it's
fucking ever? Right?
it's because one group has them, so the other group feels like they
So
need
you
them.
have to, yeah, in order to compete. Like if they got a giant N+1
really, like
blob,
I'm
you
sure
need
with
the other.
the test and goon relationship is like they need each other to cancel out our coalition, and we
What?
need Winterco to cancel out the goon coalition, goon
Right.
test. Like if you don't have the people, like you don't have the allies, then it doesn't really work out for you. Like
Right.
you have to
And I
have
mean-
ally. Like you have to get. We have to be allied to NC because test is allied to Brave, for example. Like everybody
But-
was
but
neutral, it would work.
really
but
have
not
to be?
because-
Like, say for
I
example,
like how
you
you compare
reset
Brave to NC.
reset Horde, you reset NC, and you just move to a smaller space, and you just kind of localize your content a little bit and focus on smaller scale engagements. Do you really feel like
How
test
do
or
how do
goons are
the
gonna
members make
come out
money?
and chase- I mean, my members make money all the time. I mean, are you gonna be
Like, how do
printing
we
this?
run our SRP? How do we run our
Well,
Titan
that's I mean,
program?
that's just
Like,
something that you just have to sacrifice. Like, you're not gonna have a Titan program, but you're not gonna need a Titan program. You know what I mean? Like, you still have moons, you still have
I mean, but the
Wait, how do you
people
have
mining, you
moons
still
where
have
you
who
have
are
ratting.
aligned.
Titans?
What was that, Billy? Go ahead.
And how do you have moons without Titans?
Because
But
nobody's trying to come kill them is the problem. If
But, I
somebody
mean,
wanted to evict you with the size you are, you would go away. Is the point?
yeah, I mean, you would just leave it if you were to get
I mean,
blobbed to shit,
I mean,
and you
this is
it's just
there
let
is
them
people. This is
fucking
the perfect.
steamroll.
People want to use their supers and titans here, and if we leave our group, it's going to, like, if signing you left PL tomorrow, say we have a lot of people with supers and titans, we couldn't use them as much as we wanted, because now instead of our supers and titans getting tackled like in Tenal and NC marching, or UALX for example, when we got tackled there, NC marched all the way down. So, like, but nobody's coming to save you. That was the problem that fucking those Kendar's Corp had. Nobody was coming to save. It was hard for them to use supers and titans, because if they get caught, no one's coming to save them. Everybody's going to kill them. So people want to use their toys. People want to make money. They want to use supers and titans. That's why people get in big groups, blue other groups, so they can be safer.
But you're gonna have to have some trade-offs, right? So if you're gonna want that safety net, if you're going to want that super umbrella, obviously you're gonna have to travel far for your localized content.
I don't mind traveling far. I just want, like, there be a reason to, like, no
To travel
reason.
far.
I think also though, like, so
Like they said, there's
combination
no
of-
reason for him to come invade drones. What's the point? There's no reason to go get content. Like, no reason to get big scale content anymore.
I think there's plenty of stuff, especially from what we've seen happening in the north. And I mean, obviously, you're not using your supers every day, but you're gonna have a lot more opportunities to use your supers other than just bashing a keep or Keepstar number 5 or whatever, what you guys got with GOTG just kind of folding over.
I would like to point out that we were ready for that super fight quite a few times up
Yeah,
north.
we were ready for super fights quite a few times.
But the problem is that you guys come in, with this ticker that they already know that you guys are going to come in with 300-400 super. So why buy?
I mean, there was quite a few times where we had equal numbers, but it just
the ticker's
and-
never been an issue historically before when the goons moved their supers. Like X47 is a good example. There was lots of tickers on field. We still had a giant Titan brawl. So I mean, like,
it's more about, like, people aren't willing to risk.
right. Test wasn't there with goons. Test was doing their own thing in tandem with us, arguably. So I mean, to me that was kind of refreshing, because that kind of meant that, hey, we can actually go full steam on this thing.
People just aren't willing to risk. Like, if more people were willing to risk their supers and titans, there would be a lot more fights with them. But people don't want to risk their shit. It's very unfortunate, because, like, NCPL, I would say, out of the most of a majority groups in EVE, is willing to throw down any, like, at least NCPL US time. We're willing to throw down our supers and titans quite often. We've probably done it a few times we shouldn't have. But
I can't hear you over the blast.
we're jumping on a staging Keepstar and doomsdaying somebody.
Twice, actually.
Yeah.
Once into adjacent system to their staging.
If you're in a group that's not willing to take risk with their supers and titans and stuff like that, which is, I can't really blame them at the same time, because if you lose, they're gonna feel like shit. Like, I lost like a fucking Munin fleet the other. I felt horrible. I can imagine if I lost like 5 supers on a fleet.
Especially now, like, it was a lot easier before to lose a couple supers when they were relatively easily replenished.
I mean, like even
the prices
before,
go up.
still feel like shit.
Oh yeah, you still feel like shit because you lost.
Even if everybody had
lost
fun, you'd still be like, God damn, I
Yeah, but
like,
dude, like I get fucking like angsty over like 2 Munins lost over a victory where like we just like you know
yeah.
what I mean? It's what
I
I don't like lose.
perturbed whenever you couldn't save Andreas's Nyx either, though. I remember that.
Oh, we could talk about that. We shouldn't, but we could talk about that if you want to.
No, I'm just saying, like, losing. Nobody enjoys losing shit.
I
Like,
wasn't actually
luckily,
angry there because I knew it was we were fucked. Like we should have just let it die from the very beginning. We didn't. So it was like, okay, well if we're not going to disengage, then I guess I'm just gonna have a good fight, and that's what I did. And honestly, it was a lot of fun. But that was that was my single worst loss in my Eve career. It's also like probably one of my handful of times I've actually lost like a fleet brawl like outright. But again, like you're just jumping into a wall of fucking Chinese timed fucking Munins with a Nyx on field. So I don't know.
I mean, the fucking like ticker tank wise, like I think is a problem too. Because we remember Blazing when we were tackled at like 0700 with like 30 supers or something.
that shit was so close.
They like literally they
was
had
just
more
before that.
Munins. They had more
Yes.
Munins than we had people, and they just never came in. Like we had 30 supers tackled for what, 30, 45 minutes. We had nothing. We had nothing if they would have jumped on us.
That
Was
shit
that
was
on
fantastic.
the Keepstar when there was
No,
like,
that was,
unlimited
then,
sabers?
like on a
What
gate.
what dumb shit did we drop them on initially? I think it was
The
on a
gate.
subcap gang or some dumb shit like that, and then we
And
got
they just sat there for like 30 minutes shooting Bob's facts and did fucking nothing because they're
Yeah, well,
cowards.
you were also right next door to their staging, right? That was right next door to ZH3, I believe.
It was
Yeah, it was
somewhere over there,
yeah.
but yeah, like they just.
No,
I
that
was
also
pretty
a
convinced we were dead there. I'm not
think
gonna lie. I was
they-
waiting for the next signer to go up in the impending ass whooping to come in.
I thought we were fucked, dude, to be honest. But like again, they could have just dropped a handful, like 15 or 20 dreads on the faxes, and had the mutants in between the supers and
Like
that
we
dread
had
bomb.
what,
Probably negated the majority of the super
like what,
stuff, and then like
more supers ready to jump in, and like
yeah,
5 times.
we were fucked.
maybe?
Yeah,
Like
it was
nothing.
yeah, I know it was pretty bad. Like I could even like the tension on comms was palpable. We'll put it that way.
Those are one of those fights where we're sitting around and we do something and then something happens and then DJ ats like NC or ats me and Bob's like, hey, is everything going all right? Like, no, not
I
at
just
all.
remember like the whole time Bob's like, yeah, just keep reapproaching the fact. I'm like, how about we like align out? He's like, yeah, it's probably a good call.
That's a good
I'm
idea.
like, yeah, like let's not try to feed here, please.
Couple of dudes bombed off just the right amount of clutch bubbles. Yeah, that shit was fun. Like that's what kind of what you miss if you don't have the means in place to take a loss. Like say we would have lost 30 supers right then, yeah, it would have sucked, and a couple of us probably would have our asses chewed. We still had the means to replace it in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form.
Right. So I mean, like these changes to some extent, especially with the market changes, affect smaller groups' ability to really do anything meaningful. Like if a small group wants to kind of join in on a big group's deployment or something like that, and then they end up losing these mutants now because of the changes with the market changes, or they end up losing some capitals or whatever. I mean, it's pretty easy for a small group to kind of either get completely disincentivized from logging in and fighting, or literally just have to go home because their members are fucking like mad.
I don't really feel like that's something that like
I've been part of a
I don't
smaller
think it's
group
that
when
big
we
of an
when
issue
we tried to
right
do big boy
now.
things, but we lost a lot of dreads and we kept losing dreads, and then we kept losing more dreads, and like people had did not have the means to replace it because it was a small group, and it kind
I
of
mean, I
made
have
the
fucking
small group just
difficulties in fucking PL of people getting dreads in more than one place of their own. So I can't imagine like
yeah,
people
exactly.
are like,
right.
oh, I can't afford that. I'm like, how the fuck? Like that happens everywhere, though. I think that's more of a problem of the person than the actual group they're in. There's plenty. At least, I mean, at least up till now, there was plenty of ways to make money.
Yes,
on Eve.
yes, for
Like
a long
now
time.
they're kind of getting rid of them. But
There's still quite a few.
Well,
though.
they're just
Still a
making them
lot.
less
There's still a
effective.
lot.
Rip market trading.
Yeah.
Just not plex trading. Right
I was like, dude, why is it costing me so goddamn much to put a 5 market? Oh, right, okay.
So I guess it does kind of circle back though to the question that I had is like, And I guess that's what we'll end with the for tonight, because we are at the end of our show for the evening. Um, is just what do we just like? We usually do like a small trash talk blurb or whatever, and we can do that if you want. But I'm really curious, like, if I'm curious what you guys think of, like, are the changes that are being made the right direction, or are they completely missing the point of what we actually need in this beautiful video game here?
I think it's a direction, and that's all that should really be looked at right now. Don't this Nobody should take these patch notes or these changes this week as this was CCP's attempts to fix the game and it didn't work. So obviously they don't know what they're doing. It's a direction, and it's even iterated in the text of the patch notes. If people read the entirety of it, that there is a direction they're trying to take, and it's going to have to happen over time. It can't just snap happen overnight. That's my
I think the
opinion.
I agree with
direction's
you
good.
100%.
and
Yeah.
I will say I'll believe CCP iteration when I actually see it. I've heard that so many times over the years.
I mean, that's fair.
Like I
Yeah.
think it's going in the right direction. Like, I want to bring back the brawl meta. I think that's gonna be good for the game. People enjoy that. People I don't think enjoy the current
Wow, the
sort
brawl
of.
meta is like 2006.
I think people enjoy the kitey bullshit.
It's
I think it was a little bit after 2006 too. I think I've been killed by Blaster Mega Navy issues before, and way after 2000.
Well, like
At the end of the day,
2010, there was some
people,
there was
like,
some brawling stuff. Didn't they? No, they give them some love at 2010 or 11. They
people
were
want
brawling
to
in
risk their ships at the end of the day. People are maybe not the FC is fine when people die, but people generally are fine if they feed as long as they had fun. Like I think
as long as they don't have to move their shit. I think you're right. People don't care if they feed. Lose a ship here or there. But as soon as you have to evac somewhere, oh my god, the world's coming to an end.
Well, that's a
someone
little
should
bit
just
different though. You've lost MySpace, blue.
I think like we lost fucking space last year, and I
I
think
don't
I
like
would
moving it,
say
even if we haven't lost space.
I would
I
say
don't know shit.
losing Vale and Tino and Tribute made our coalition a lot stronger
It
than.
did. It did.
I mean,
But
we did get tribute back or Tino back though, so
But
it doesn't.
you get what like we
but
lost.
it incentivized.
We
It
got our
also
ass kicked in a
incentivizes getting.
war, and we came back. I think stronger than we've been in like a year or two.
That
Maybe
was
2
I
years.
think.
fun.
I
And
think we
backing
we
everyone.
approach it the right way as well, though. Like from a rhetoric side, from a hey guys, this is happening, so this is what we're gonna do, kind of thing. Not like this is our home, we have to defend our home. Our home is under attack, and then like when that happens, like that alliance is fucking out. Like they're done.
Oh, you CVA?
GOTG.
GOTG, like yeah, that when that kind of rhetoric happens, like kiss your fucking alliance or coalition.
No, but look who the rhetoric was coming from. He talks a lot.
The best time zone tanker in the game.
That's best time zone tanker in the
One
game.
more wars than you've had
He's
sex.
got a business degree, don't you know?
Oof. All right.
remember
well,
he used to-
How
he was,
how smug were you, Billy, after like the war was over?
Oh, dude, no fucking words.
Like, can't even imagine.
Talk shit, get hit.
I like how he,
Billy, you can't talk
Billy
shit. You
started
were
off
gonna
with
apologize to him live on air. So
Billy
don't even sit here and run your mouth.
Billy starts
No,
off.
no,
Yeah,
listen.
yeah.
I'm more than happy to admit that I was probably, how do I put this? Like, I was like super fucking sour at like the end of one of the CSM meetings, and I was pissed, and that's what caused it all. And I probably shouldn't have done that. My bad. Start wasn't terrible at CSM, like, but like I'm not mad about the like effects of the war. Like he talked shit and then he got hit. Like it's more
I
about
will
like
say that
the
was
way.
one of the greatest like shocking things I read. Like the test alliance things. I was like, is he for real? I remember a message
That's so
Joe got him like
funny.
immediately after. I'm like, so is this like for real? You all coming?
Oh, is that the like this is on now ping like
Yeah, and
at
I
the
was
show?
like,
Well, the thing
no,
is,
the
like,
one
literally
like
all that I was gonna do
immediately
is like
after the
I was gonna be
CSM
like, I was like literally like gonna be like, you fucking idiot, and I'm gonna deploy a sig or something, like just fuck with him a little bit. But then he like talks so much shit. I'm like like to the point where it's like if I don't go there and kill him, it's like we look weak, right? So it's like I
Yeah,
have
he
no
really
fucking
screwed
choice.
himself on that. Like he was already having issues handling, and he just had to go and call you guys out. I'm like that's not gonna end well.
All right. Well, anyway,
how-
I think this is where we're gonna call it for the night. If nobody has any objections, if there's any last things you want to say, feel free to say them.
Can I
That's how
just
this show
say,
works.
I
Fucking
have
it.
made 300,000 bells in Animal Crossing catching tarantulas during this stream, and I'm so smug.
Is that good?
Jeez.
Yeah. I had to pay off a raccoon.
That's my shout out. Fucking it.
Fucking it. Okay. Anybody else have shout outs tonight?
Cowards never win.
I put that
That's
in the
all I
title of
gotta
the stream, dude.
Oh yeah, you sure did.
Like shout out
Tiny
to
user recruiting,
Logi
by the way.
Pilot. Like shout out to Logi Pilots though. Please don't stop flying Logi.
Yeah, thank you. Shout out to Logi. Fuck CC. Put Logi on kill mails. I'm still gonna beg for it. You fucking cooks.
US reign
We
number
talk
one.
about the people who
USDT
move stuff
Logi
around. Those
STNTL.
guys.
Yeah, those guys,
Oh,
dude,
Logi.
totally. The logistics pilots, yeah.
Alright. Well, anyway, if you're still watching, everybody thanks for watching. Make sure you follow and get the notifications so that you know when we go live next. But I'll tell you, it's going to be next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and every Tuesday to follow until one of us gets tired of doing it, and that'll never happen because this is fun stuff. So, again, thanks for watching. Have a great night.